Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the silk-lined boots of a medieval prince, where your every breath is watched, your every word analysed, and your every decision could spark wars or forge peace. Picture yourself in a world where golden goblets hide poison, where your best friend might be your assassin, and where the weight of a crown feels heavier than the armour you'll wear into battle. The story may solve mysteries you never had an explanation for, like why royalty seemed so paranoid, or why medieval princes often died young despite their privileged lives. So, before you explore the story with me, please take a moment to help me subscribe to the channel, like and share this video, or maybe leave a comment below, but make sure you do it when you really like what I bring to you. Let me know where and when you started watching this video, or maybe give me a compliment about how these stories help you drift off to sleep. Now, let's keep the lights as soft as possible, turn on the fan for a gentle sound to help the story feel more emotional, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. The first pale fingers of dawn creep through the heavy velvet curtains of your princely chamber, and already you can hear the soft rustle of servants preparing for your awakening. You're not allowed the luxury of stirring naturally. Even your sleep schedule belongs to the crown. A gentle knock echoes against the carved oak door, followed by the whispered announcement that has marked every morning of your royal life. Your Highness, the sun has risen, but unlike a commoner who might roll over for another precious hour of rest, you must rise immediately. The day's elaborate choreography cannot wait. Your chamber is a marvel that would make modern billionaires weep with envy. Tapestries depicting your family's greatest victories hang from stone walls, each thread worth more than a peasant's yearly income. The bed itself is a fortress of silk and down surrounded by curtains so fine they seem spun from moonlight. Yet for all its luxury, this room is also your prison. The windows are positioned to prevent easy escape. The doors are always guarded, and even the chamber pot is made of silver, because heaven forbid a prince should relieve himself in anything common. The morning ritual begins with your body servant, a man whose entire existence revolves around your physical needs. He approaches with the reverence of a priest approaching an altar, carrying a basin of warm water scented with herbs that peasants have never even dreamed of. The water has been tested 3 times, once by the kitchen staff, once by your food taster, and once by the servant himself. Paranoia isn't just healthy in your position, it's survival. You're stripped of your sleeping garments, which are immediately whisked away to be cleaned, inspected, and guarded. Even your night clothes are potential weapons in the wrong hands. A piece of fabric that touched your skin could be used in sympathetic magic by your enemies. Your naked body is examined with clinical efficiency, not for admiration but for any signs of illness, injury, or the dreaded marks that might indicate poison or plague. Medieval medicine may be primitive, but your physicians have learned to read your skin like a manuscript. The bathing process is an ordeal that would exhaust most people before their day properly begins. You don't simply wash, you undergo transformation. Servants scrub your skin with cloth soaked in wine and herbs, believing that cleanliness is not just next to godliness, but essential for maintaining the divine right that justifies your rule. Your hair is washed with imported oils that cost more than a knight's warhorse, then carefully arranged to complement the day's political agendas. If you're meeting with French diplomat, your hair might be styled in the continental fashion. If you're addressing your own nobles, it's arranged to emphasize your native heritage. The clothing ceremony rivals any religious service for its solemnity and complexity. Each garment is presented to you with the formality of a diplomatic treaty. Your underclothes are made of silk so fine it feels like wearing clouds. But they're also practically armour, specially woven to prevent knives from penetrating easily. Your tunic bears your family's colours and symbols, but the embroidery isn't just decorative. Each thread placement communicates your current political alliances, your military campaigns, and even your marriage availability. Historians still argue whether these clothing codes were standardized across medieval Europe or unique to individual courts, but everyone agrees they were taken deadly seriously. Your boots are works of art that happen to be functional footwear, made from leather so supple it molds to your feet like a second skin. They're designed to be significant when you need stealth and imposing when you need presence. The heels contain small compartments for the emergency item, perhaps a vial of antidote, a tiny blade, or a seal for urgent correspondence. Your belt isn't just a fashion accessory, it's a toolkit disguised as royal regalia, holding everything from a ceremonial dagger to a small purse of gold coins for emergency bribes. The final touch is your jewellery, and here's where the morning routine becomes almost mystical. Each ring, each chain, each brooch carries meaning beyond its material value. Your signet ring bears the power to authorize executions or pardons with a simple press into warm wax. The chain around your neck might hold a relic blessed by the Pope himself, offering spiritual protection alongside political legitimacy. Even your earrings, yes, medieval princes often wore earrings, communicate your cosmopolitan sophistication and access to exotic trade routes. By the time this transformation is complete, you've been awake for nearly 2 hours, and you haven't yet made a single decision for yourself. Every choice has been filtered through tradition, politics, and the careful calculations of your advisors. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished metal mirror, not the clear glass mirrors of modern times, but a surface that shows you dimly, as if you're looking at yourself through water. Perhaps that's appropriate, since the person looking back barely resembles the sleepy prince who woke up in silk sheets just hours ago. As you prepare to leave your chamber and face the day's challenges, you're acutely aware that this elaborate morning routine isn't just about looking good, it's about survival. Every thread, every gesture, every carefully arranged curl of hair sends messages to friends and enemies alike. In a world where appearance literally means the difference between life and death, your morning transformation is the first battle you fight each day. And like every battle in a prince's life, losing isn't an option. The heavy oak door swings open, revealing the stone corridor where your destiny awaits. But first, you must navigate the intricate dance of court politics that begins before you've even had your first meal. The morning has transformed you from a vulnerable human into a living symbol of power. But that transformation comes with a price that grows heavier with each passing day. Your stomach might be rumbling from the elaborate morning routine, but food must wait. Education comes first, always first, because an ignorant prince is a dead prince, and usually a kingdom's death sentence too. You make your way through cold stone corridors toward the solar, that precious room where sunlight streams through real glass windows, illuminating the instruments of your intellectual torture. Your tutor awaits with the patience of a spider and the disposition of a hungry wolf. Master Guillaume stands beside a heavy wooden table laden with manuscripts, scrolls, and writing materials that cost more than most nobles' annual income. He's a man whose entire life revolves around cramming knowledge into your princely skull, whether that skull wants it or not. His robes mark him as a scholar, but the calluses on his knuckles suggest he's not above physical persuasion when Latin conjugations refuse to stick. Medieval education operates on a simple principle. Pain makes lessons memorable. Your Highness, he begins with a bow that manages to convey both respect and barely contained irritation. We shall commence with rhetoric this morning. You suppress a groan because groaning earns you extra hours with Aristotle's more tedious works. Rhetoric isn't just about speaking prettily, it's about survival. Every word you speak in public will be analysed, dissected, and potentially used against you. A poorly constructed sentence could spark rebellions, while a well-turned phrase might prevent wars. You settle onto a cushioned bench that's only marginally more comfortable than a stone slab. The first scroll unfurls to reveal Latin text that swims before your eyes like tadpoles in a pond. Cicero's De Orator, Master Guillaume announces with the enthusiasm of a man describing a particularly virulent plague. But here's the thing about Cicero that your tutor won't mention. This ancient Roman understood that words are weapons sharper than any sword. Every prince who mastered Cicero's techniques lived longer than those who didn't. The morning progresses through a carefully orchestrated symphony of intellectual suffering. You translate passages from Latin to your native tongue, then back to Latin, because bilingual competence isn't optional for medieval royalty. You'll need Latin for dealing with the church, French for diplomatic correspondence, and whatever local languages your future territories might speak. Master Guillaume, correct your pronunciation with the precision of a master swordsmith, because mispronouncing a single syllable in a treaty negotiation could have cost your kingdom a province. Mathematics comes next, though medieval math bears little resemblance to modern calculations. You learn to calculate distances for militarist campaigns, estimate tax revenues from various territories, and determine how much grain your kingdom needs to survive a siege. These aren't abstract exercises. They're life and death skills disguised as academic subjects. The abacus clicks under your fingers as you work through problems that seem designed to make your brain leak out through your ears. If Duke Robert's army travels 12 leagues per day, and your forces move 15 leagues per day, how long before you can intercept his advance toward your father's castle? Master Guillaume poses this question with the casual air of a man discussing the weather, but you know he's testing your ability to think tactically under pressure. Get the math wrong, and imaginary kingdoms fall. Get it wrong in real life, and actual people die. History lessons blur the line between education and entertainment, though the entertainment value is often lost on you. Master Guillaume recites the rise and fall of kingdoms with the dramatic flair of a travelling minstrel, but every story carries a lesson. The tale of King Harold's defeat at Hastings isn't just about Norman conquest. It's about what happens when you fight battles you're not prepared for. The story of Charlemagne's empire isn't just about greatness. It's about how even the mightiest kingdoms crumble when succession isn't properly managed. Your tutor has a particular fondness for recounting the failures of princes who neglected their education. Prince Edmund the Simple, he intones with obvious relish, couldn't read his own treatise and signed away half his inheritance to a man who promised him a magical horse. These cautionary tales aren't entirely factual. Historians still argue whether Prince Edmund even existed, but they serve their purpose. Fear is an excellent motivator for academic achievement. The afternoon brings military strategy, and here your education becomes genuinely exciting. Spread across the table is a detailed map of your father's kingdom and the surrounding territories. Wooden pieces represent armies, castles, and supply lines. Master Guillaume poses scenarios with the creativity of a sadistic playwright. The northern lords have rebelled, the eastern border faces invasion, and your treasury is nearly empty. You have 3,000 men and winter approaches. What do you do? These war games aren't child's play. They're based on real conflicts that destroyed real kingdoms. Every decision you make is critiqued with brutal honesty. Move your army too quickly, and Master Guillaume gleefully informs you that your horses have died of exhaustion. Ignore your supply lines, and your imaginary soldiers starve before reaching the battlefield. The wooden pieces become symbols of genuine human lives, and the weight of command settles on your shoulders like a lead cloak. Philosophy arrives in the late afternoon when your brain feels like pudding and your patience has worn thinner than parchment. But Aristotle, Plato, and Augustine aren't just intellectual exercises, they're survival manuals for medieval royalty. These ancient thinkers grappled with questions that every prince faces. What makes a just ruler? When is war morally justified? How do you balance personal desires against public duty? The answers aren't simple, but thinking through these problems now might prevent you from making catastrophic mistakes later. Your tutor occasionally rewards good performance with stories that aren't found in any official chronicles. He whispers about secret alliances between kingdoms, about princes who faked their own deaths to escape unwanted marriages, and about the hidden codes that diplomats use to communicate during negotiations. These aren't scholarly subjects, but they are the kind of knowledge that separates living princes from dead ones. Writing practice consumes the final hour of formal education. Your penmanship must be perfect because every document bearing your signature becomes a historical record. More importantly, you're learning to craft the kind of prose that can convince allies to fight for you and enemies to sue for peace. Each letter is formed with deliberate precision, each word chosen for maximum impact. Medieval princes who wrote poorly found their correspondence ignored or mocked, which often led to political isolation and eventual downfall. As the sun begins its descent toward evening, Master Guillaume finally dismisses you with assignments that would make modern graduate students weep. You must memorize 50 lines of Virgil's Aeneid, compose a treatise on just taxation, and solve a series of geometric problems related to castle fortification. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, with added complexity as your abilities improve. The irony isn't lost on you. While peasant children your age are learning practical skills like farming or blacksmithing, you're buried in books and theoretical exercises, yet this education is ultimately more practical than any trade. Because your job isn't to shoe horses or grow wheat. Your job is to keep an entire kingdom from collapsing, and that requires knowledge that can't be learned through simple experience. Walking back to your chambers as twilight settles over the castle, you carry the accumulated wisdom of centuries in your tired brain. Tomorrow's lessons will add more layers to this foundation, building the intellectual fortress that might someday keep you alive when armies and assassins come calling. Education may feel like torture now, but ignorance would be a far more painful way to die. The formal lessons with Master Guillaume may have ended, but your real education is just beginning. As you navigate the stone corridors toward the Great Hall, you enter a classroom where the curriculum is deception. The textbooks are human faces, and failing grades are measured in daggers between the ribs. Welcome to court politics, where every smile hides a scheme and every friendly gesture might be your last. Your father's court swirls around you like a beautifully poisonous garden. Lords and ladies drift through the halls in their finest silks and velvets, their conversations flowing like honey, laced with arsenic. They bow as you pass, their eyes tracking your every movement with the intensity of hawks watching a particularly plump rabbit. You're learning to read these faces like illuminated manuscripts, searching for the truth hidden beneath layers of courtly polish. Lord Aldrich approaches with his characteristic serpent smile, the same expression he wore when he convinced your cousin to invest in a silver mine that turned out to be filled with nothing but expensive dirt. "Your Highness," he purrs, executing a bow that's perfectly calculated, deep enough to show respect, shallow enough to maintain his dignity. "I trust your studies progress well." Knowledge is such a precious commodity. don't you think? You've learned that when Lord Aldrich discusses precious commodities, someone's about to lose their shirt, their lands, or their head. Indeed, my lord, you reply, matching his tone with the precision of a master musician. Though I find the most valuable lessons often come from observing rather than reading. It's a diplomatic response that says nothing while implying everything. Lord Aldrich's eyes narrow almost imperceptibly. Approval or threat, you're still learning to distinguish between them. This conversation will be reported to at least 3 other nobles before the evening meal. Analyse for hidden meanings that may or may not exist. Lady Margaret glides past in a whisper of silk, her presence as commanding as any armoured knights. She rules the court's women with an iron fist wrapped in perfumed velvet, and her approval can make or break marriages, alliances, and reputations. Her smile toward you is warm enough to melt winter ice, but you've seen that same smile directed at people who mysteriously disappear during hunting accidents. She pauses to compliment your morning attire, and you realise this isn't casual conversation. She's testing whether you understand the political messages woven into your clothing choices. The blue brings out your eyes, Your Highness, she observes, though you know she's really commenting on your decision to wear colours associated with your mother's family rather than your father's. Quite diplomatic. The pause before diplomatic carries enough weight to crush a siege engine. You're being evaluated on choices you didn't even know you were making, graded on a test you never realised you were taking. Your childhood friend Thomas sidles up beside you, his familiar presence providing momentary relief in this sea of calculated interactions. But even Thomas has changed since you both entered the dangerous waters of court politics. His casual conversation about hawking plans contains subtle inquiries about your father's military movements. His jokes probe your opinions on recent tax policies. Friendship and espionage have become so intertwined that distinguishing between them feels impossible. You find yourself wondering whether Thomas genuinely cares about your well-being, or whether he's gathering intelligence for someone else's benefit. The great hall buzzes with a dozen simultaneous conversations, each one a carefully choreographed performance. Nobles cluster in groups that shift like weather patterns, alliances forming and dissolving based on political winds you're still learning to read. You notice Lord Edmund speaking intensely with the bishop's representative while casting meaningful glances toward Lord Aldrich. Lady Eleanor laughs musically at Baron Geoffrey's jest while her eyes scan the room for more important conversations to join. Every gesture, every glance, every pause carries meaning in this complex social mathematics. Your father's Chancellor, Master William, materializes beside you with the unsettling quiet that makes everyone suspect he practices dark magic in his spare time. Your Highness might find this afternoon's petitions educational, he murmurs in that voice like parchment rustling in a tomb. Particularly the dispute between the wool merchants and the monastery. Sometimes the most valuable lessons hide in the most mundane conflicts. You've learned that Master William's suggestions are actually commands disguised as helpful advice, and ignoring them leads to uncomfortable conversations with your father. The monastery dispute proves more fascinating than expected. Brother Benedict argues that the merchants are cheating on weights and measures, while Master Peter insists the monks are demanding unreasonable tithes. But as you listen, you realise this isn't really about wool or money, it's about power. The church and the merchant class are testing boundaries, using this minor disagreement to establish precedents for larger conflicts. How your father resolves this dispute will signal his position on dozens of future issues. Every judgment becomes a political statement whether you intend it or not. During the afternoon's hunting preparations, Lord Roderick shares what he claims is friendly advice about managing your future holdings. His suggestions sound reasonable, until you realise he's subtly advocating policies that would benefit his own territories at your expense. His casual mention of marriage alliances contains specific recommendations that would strengthen his family's position while potentially weakening yours. You're learning that helpful advice often comes with invisible price tags attached. The Duchess's youngest daughter, Lady Catherine, engages you in what appears to be innocent flirtation, but is actually sophisticated intelligence gathering. Her giggles and blushes mask sharp questions about your opinions on military strategy, territorial expansion, and religious policy. You find yourself simultaneously charmed by her wit and terrified by her competence. Historians still argue whether medieval noblewomen were naturally gifted at political manipulation, or whether they received formal training in these arts. But their effectiveness is undeniable. Master Francis, your father's spy master, appears beside you during evening prayers with information that makes your blood run cold. Young Lord Geoffrey has been asking interesting questions about your daily routines. He whispers while appearing to focus devoutly on the altar. His curiosity about your morning walks and evening studies seems excessive. The implication hangs in the air like incense smoke. Someone may be planning something unpleasant for your future. Paranoia becomes a survival skill rather than a character flaw. The evening's entertainment provides another layer of education as travelling musicians perform songs that seem innocent until you understand their hidden meanings. The ballad about a brave knight's tragic death is actually commentary on last year's failed rebellion. The romantic song about star-crossed lovers contains coded messages about current marriage negotiations between rival kingdoms. Even entertainment serves political purposes in your world, and learning to decode these messages becomes essential for understanding what's really happening around you. As the day winds toward its close, you realize that court politics isn't a subject you study. It's an environment you inhabit. Every conversation is a chess game. Every relationship a potential alliance or threat. The skills you're developing here are more complex than military strategy, more subtle than diplomatic negotiation. You're learning to think 3 moves ahead while appearing completely spontaneous, to gather information while revealing nothing, to build trust while maintaining suspicion. The most chilling lesson comes as you prepare to retire. Lady Margaret approaches with a final observation that feels like benediction and threat rolled into one elegant package. "You're learning quickly, Your Highness," she says with that mysterious smile. "Your father will be pleased. Just remember, in this court, everyone is always watching, everyone is always listening, and everyone is always planning." The prince who forgets this lesson usually doesn't live long enough to regret it. Walking back to your chambers, you carry new knowledge that feels heavier than armor. Tomorrow will bring more lessons in human nature's darker arts, more practice in reading souls as carefully as any scholarly text. Court politics may not be found in any formal curriculum, but it's the most important subject you'll ever study, because mastering it means the difference between ruling a kingdom and decorating a tomb. The morning sun barely kisses the castle's highest towers when you're already being strapped into leather padding that will soon be covered by chainmail and steel plate. Your body aches from yesterday's combat training, but medieval warfare waits for no prince's comfort. In the armoury, master at arms. Sir Gareth inspects your gear with the clinical precision of a battlefield surgeon, because a loose strap or faulty buckle could mean the difference between victory and a very messy death. "A prince who cannot fight is a prince who cannot rule," Sir Gareth announces for what must be the 1000th time, though his scarred face suggests he learned this lesson the hard way. His left arm bears the twisted remnants of an old wound that never healed properly, and his limp tells the story of a battle where retreat wasn't an option. These aren't just battle scars. They're teaching aids, living reminders of what happens when training meets reality. Your sword feels impossibly heavy in your hands, though you've been building strength for years. The blade isn't the elegant rapier of romantic tales. It's a brutal chunk of steel designed to hack through armor, bone, and whatever else stands between you and survival. Master swordsmiths spend months forging each weapon, folding steel over and over until it can split a hair or cleave a helm. Yet for all its deadly beauty, your sword is worthless unless you can wield it properly. The training yard echoes with the clash of steel as you practice basic combinations that will become instinctive reflexes if you live long enough. Strike, parry, riposte, movements that feel clumsy now but must flow like water when arrows are whistling past your head and enemy knights are charging toward your position. Sir Gareth corrects your footwork with sharp raps from his practice blade, each correction accompanied by colourful commentary about your parentage and intellectual capacity. Your stance betrays your intentions. He barks after your sword telegraphs an overhead strike so obviously that a blind monk could have dodged it. In battle, subtlety keeps you breathing while showmanship gets you buried. He demonstrates the proper technique with fluid movements that belie his age and injuries. The practice sword becomes an extension of his will, moving with deadly precision that makes your own efforts look like a child playing with sticks. Archery practice follows sword work, and here you discover that Hollywood has lied about everything. Drawing a medieval longbow requires strength that most modern athletes would envy, while achieving accuracy demands years of practice that turn fingers bloody and shoulders into knots of muscle. Your first attempts send arrows sailing wide of the target, much to the amusement of the castle guards who have gathered to watch their future lord embarrass himself. The bow doesn't care about your royal blood, observes Master Fletcher as he adjusts your grip for the 100th time. Physics shows no deference to titles. He's right, of course. The mathematical precision required for archery operates independently of social rank, distance, wind speed, arrow weight, and draw strength create an equation that royalty cannot influence through divine right or political maneuvering. It's oddly refreshing to face challenges that respond only to skill and practice. You learn that medieval archery isn't just about hitting individual targets, it's about raining death on enemy formations from distances that seem impossible. English longbowmen at Agincourt could penetrate French plate armour at ranges exceeding 200 yards, turning knights' charges into suicide runs. Your practice targets are painted with the heraldic symbols of neighbouring kingdoms, a subtle reminder that these skills may someday be used against specific enemies rather than straw-filled dummies. Mounted combat transforms you from a stumbling student into something resembling a medieval knight. Though the transformation is neither comfortable nor graceful, your destrier, a warhorse bred for size, strength, and controlled aggression, stands 17 hands high and possesses an attitude that makes wildcats seem docile. Climbing into the saddle while wearing full armour requires assistance from 2 squires and considerable prayer to whatever saints protect fools attempting impossible tasks. The relationship between knight and destrier is more partnership than ownership. Your horse must trust you enough to charge toward lines of spears, while you must trust him to remain steady during the chaos of battle. Medieval war horses received training that rivaled their riders' preparation, learning to strike with iron-shod hooves, bite enemy horses, and navigate battlefield obstacles that would challenge modern cavalry. Historians still argue whether these partnerships were based primarily on training or genuine emotional bonds, but surviving accounts suggest many knights mourned their horses' deaths as deeply as fallen comrades. Lance work reveals the brutal physics of medieval warfare in ways that textbooks cannot convey. charging at full gallop while maintaining perfect balance, accurate aim, and tactical awareness pushes human capabilities to their absolute limits. A properly executed lance charge concentrates the combined momentum of horse and rider into a steel point roughly the diameter of a gold coin, creating impact forces that can punch through plate armor like parchment. Your first successful strike against the Quintain, a rotating training device designed to test accuracy and timing, produces a satisfaction that surprises you with its intensity. The wooden target splinters under your lance point, while the rotating arm sweeps harmlessly overhead. For a brief moment, you understand why knights would risk everything for the glory of mounted combat, why tournaments drew crowds from across Europe, and why the thunder of charging cavalry could break enemy morale before weapons ever crossed. But Sir Gareth quickly reminds you that battlefield reality differs dramatically from training yard success. The Quintain doesn't fight back, he observes with characteristic bluntness. Enemy knights tend to be less cooperative about letting you run them through, and he describes battles where perfectly trained knights die because their horses stumbled, where masterful technique proved useless against superior numbers, and where victory often belonged to whoever made fewer mistakes rather than who demonstrated greater skill. Siege warfare training introduces you to medieval technology's darker innovations. Trebuchets, mangonels, and ballistas represent engineering marvels designed specifically for destruction. Learning to operate these machines teaches you their capabilities and limitations, knowledge that becomes crucial when defending your own castles or attacking at enemy fortifications. You discover that siege warfare is primarily about patience, logistics, and mathematical precision rather than individual heroics. The afternoon brings lessons in battlefield command that prove more challenging than any physical combat. Leading troops requires understanding psychology, geography, and logistics while making life and death decisions under tremendous pressure. Sir Gareth poses scenarios with the creativity of a demon. Your archers are running low on arrows, your cavalry charge has failed, and enemy reinforcements approach from the east. Your orders. These exercises have no perfect solutions, only choices that minimize catastrophe. Hand-to-hand combat training strips away romantic notions about medieval warfare's nobility. Fighting with daggers, maces, and bare hands in the mud reveals combat's brutal reality. It's about survival rather than honor, about ugly efficiency rather than elegant technique. You learn that battles are won by whoever remains standing after everyone else has fallen, regardless of how that standing is achieved. As evening shadows lengthen across the practice yard, you remove armor that feels welded to your body through sweat, blood, and determination. Your muscles scream protest that will echo through tomorrow's training, but you've made progress that Sir Gareth acknowledges with a grudging nod. You might live through your first real battle, he concedes, which constitutes high praise from a man who measures success in survival rates rather than tournament victories. Walking back toward the castle, you carry new respect for the warriors who've mastered these deadly arts. Combat training isn't just about learning to fight, it's about preparing for the moment when political negotiations fail and kingdom's survival depends on young princes who can lead from the front lines. Tomorrow will bring more pain, more learning, and more preparation for a future where your sword arm might prove more valuable than your royal bloodline. The chapel bells toll prime as you kneel on cold stone floors that have witnessed centuries of royal prayers, confessions, and desperate bargains with the Almighty. Your knees ache against the unforgiving granite. But comfort isn't the point. Suffering purifies the soul. or so Brother Augustine reminds you, with the enthusiasm of a man who genuinely believes pain brings you closer to paradise. The morning light filters through stained glass windows that cost more than most kingdoms' annual revenues, casting rainbow patterns across your folded hands. Pater noster qui es in caelis, you intone along with the assembled court, though your Latin pronunciation still makes Brother Augustine wince visibly. The Lord's Prayer flows around you in a sea of voices, some genuinely devout, others merely going through motions that political survival demands. You've learned to distinguish between the two. Genuine faith carries a different resonance than practiced performance, though both serve important functions in medieval governance. Your relationship with God is complicated by the uncomfortable reality that divine favour and political necessity don't always align. The Church teaches forgiveness and mercy, but ruling a kingdom sometimes requires actions that would make saints weep. You'll spend hours in confession discussing theoretical sins that may become very real choices, depending on how future conflicts develop. Father Benedict listens to your spiritual struggles with the patience of a man who's heard similar confessions from generations of princes, each one wrestling with the gap between Christian ideals and royal responsibilities. The morning Mass stretches through what feels like geological ages, though you know it's actually less than 2 hours. Every gesture, every response, every moment of supposed spontaneous devotion is carefully choreographed theatre, designed to demonstrate your family's divine mandate to rule. The common folk who crowd the chapel's rear sections watch your every move, searching for signs of God's approval or disapproval. A missed cue or poorly timed response could spark rumours about your spiritual fitness that would spread faster than plague and prove nearly as deadly to your political prospects. Brother Matthias approaches after the service with scrolls containing the day's religious obligations, his pale face glowing with the fervour of someone who's never questioned whether God really needs quite this much attention. Your Highness must review the papal correspondence regarding the monastery dispute, he announces, though you suspect this is less about spiritual guidance and more about political manoeuvring disguised as religious duty. The Pope's opinion on wool tithes carries implications that extend far beyond monastic economics. Your private prayer chamber provides blessed relief from public devotion's performative aspects. Here you can actually communicate with God instead of demonstrating your piety for political audiences. The small room contains a kneeling bench, a crucifix carved from ivory that once belonged to your grandmother, and a collection of relics whose authenticity ranges from probable to wildly optimistic. The silence feels profound after hours of chanted Latin and ceremonial responses, yet even private prayer carries political weight in your position. Your choice of saints to petition reflects diplomatic positions that other kingdoms' spies will analyse for hidden meanings. Praying to St. James suggests military intentions toward territories he protects. Seeking St. Catherine's intercession implies concerns about wisdom and learning that might indicate educational policy changes. You find yourself calculating the political implications of spiritual choices, wondering when communion with the divine became another form of international diplomacy. The afternoon brings religious instruction that blends theology with statecraft in ways that would surprise modern believers. Father Marcus explains how church doctrine supports your family's claim to divine right, while carefully avoiding discussion of competing interpretations that favour rival claimants. Religious education becomes a masterclass in selective reasoning, where inconvenient biblical passages are explained away through theological gymnastics that would impress circus performers. Remember, Your Highness, Father Marcus intones while discussing the parable of the Good Samaritan, that charity must be tempered with wisdom, A prince who gives everything to the poor leaves nothing for defending the kingdom against enemies who show no such Christian mercy. Chun, this practical theology shapes your understanding of how religious principles apply to royal duties, though the contradictions sometimes make your head spin faster than a monastery's prayer wheel. Canon law study reveals the Church's sophisticated legal system that parallels secular courts while claiming superior authority. You learn about ecclesiastical privileges that protect clergy from royal justice, about papal supremacy that theoretically supersedes royal power, and about the delicate dance between spiritual and temporal authority that has sparked wars and toppled kingdoms. Understanding these legal frameworks becomes essential because religious disputes often mask political conflicts that can destroy unwary rulers. The monastery visits that punctuate your religious education provide fascinating glimpses into medieval spirituality's practical applications. Brother Thomas shows you illuminated manuscripts where monks have spent decades copying sacred texts, their artwork creating beauty that transcends the words they preserve. These books represent treasures more valuable than gold, containing knowledge that barbarian invasions couldn't destroy and political upheavals couldn't suppress. The irony isn't lost on you that these men of God preserve civilization's learning while you train for wars that might destroy it. Confession becomes a weekly ordeal that tests your ability to balance honesty with political discretion. Father Benedict listens to your sins with professional detachment, though you sometimes catch him taking mental notes about information that could prove useful for church interests. The seal of confession supposedly protects your revelations, but you've learnt that supposedly is a dangerous word in political contexts. You confess to pride, anger, and lustful thoughts while carefully avoiding mention of the assassination plots you've overheard or the military strategies you've helped plan. Religious festivals transform the castle into a stage where faith and politics perform their eternal dance. Easter celebrations demonstrate your family's devotion while providing opportunities for diplomatic negotiations disguised as spiritual observances. Christmas masses become forums for displaying wealth, power, and divine favour to subjects who need regular reminders about why God chose your family to rule them. Even genuine religious joy gets filtered through political calculation, until you sometimes wonder whether you're celebrating Christ's birth or your dynasty's continued survival. The theological debates that occupy your evening studies would challenge university scholars, yet they're essential knowledge for medieval royalty. Questions about predestination, free will, and divine justice aren't academic exercises when your decisions affect thousands of souls' eternal destinations. If you order an execution, does God hold you responsible for that death? If you fail to prevent a war, are the resulting casualties charged against your spiritual account? These aren't comfortable questions, but princes who avoid uncomfortable questions rarely rule successfully. Pilgrimage planning consumes considerable time and resources while providing spiritual benefits that may or may not justify the enormous practical costs. Your proposed journey to Canterbury would demonstrate piety while creating opportunities for diplomatic meetings along the route. However, travelling exposes you to assassination attempts, removes you from kingdom management, and costs enough gold to fund a small war. Historians still argue whether medieval pilgrimages were primarily spiritual journeys or elaborate political theatre, but the distinction matters less than their practical effects on royal power and popular perception. Holy relics collection becomes another form of a medieval arms race, where kingdoms compete for divine favour through accumulating sacred objects of questionable provenance. Your family's treasury contains enough fragments of the true cross to build several crucifixes, which either demonstrates God's miraculous multiplication of sacred materials or suggests that medieval relic dealers possessed impressive creativity. Regardless of their authenticity, these objects provide spiritual comfort and political legitimacy that justify their enormous costs. As Vespers bells echo through the castle corridors, you reflect on the day's religious obligations that shape every aspect of royal life. Faith in medieval times isn't a private matter between individual souls and God. It's a public performance, a political tool, and a genuine source of spiritual guidance, all wrapped together in ways that defy modern understanding. You pray for wisdom to navigate these competing demands, for strength to bear responsibilities that grow heavier each day, and for God's forgiveness when duty forces choices that Christian conscience questions. The irony follows you to your evening prayers. You serve a God of peace while preparing for wars, worship a Saviour who preached poverty while accumulating wealth, and follow a teacher who blessed the meek while exercising power that could crush entire kingdoms. These contradictions define medieval royalty's spiritual struggle, creating tensions that will follow you from chapel to battlefield to throne room until death finally resolves all earthly conflicts. The Great Hall transforms as evening approaches, shifting from a place of mundane business into a theatre of power, where every gesture carries weight and every seating arrangement declares war or peace. You enter through doors that have welcomed kings and condemned traitors, your footsteps echoing against stone floors polished smooth by centuries of political drama. Tonight's feast isn't just dinner, it's a battlefield where alliances form and dissolve over wine that costs more than horses and food that represents months of peasant labour. The high table looms before you like an altar of ambition, its elevated position allowing you to survey the assembled nobles while they study your every expression for signs of favour or disfavour. Your chair, carved from oak that survived Viking raids and Norman conquests, positions you precisely where medieval protocol demands, close enough to your father to demonstrate succession, while distant enough to avoid appearing presumptuous. The mathematics of medieval seating arrangements require diplomatic expertise that would challenge modern ambassadors. Lord Chancellor William materialises beside your chair, with guest lists that read like battle plans, each name representing complex calculations of political necessity and personal preference. Duke Robert arrives with his usual retinue. He murmurs in that voice like parchment rustling in crypts. Though his food taster seems unusually nervous tonight. The implication hangs in the air like incense smoke. Someone expects poison, which means someone probably brought poison, which means tonight's feast could become tomorrow's funeral. You take your place as nobles flood into the hall, wearing their finest silks and their sharpest smiles. Lady Eleanor approaches with a curtsy that demonstrates perfect technique while her eyes calculate your political value like a merchant appraising gems. Her gown shimmers with threads that cost more than villages, yet you know she's borrowed against next year's harvest to afford tonight's display. Medieval nobility operates on credit extended by reputation and secured by bloodlines, creating an economic system where appearance determines reality. The procession of courses begins with fanfare that announces each dish as if it were conquering territory. Peacocks roasted and redressed in their own plumage arrive like exotic ambassadors, while swans glazed with honey and spices represent culinary artistry that borders on necromancy. These aren't meals, they're statements of power, demonstrations of wealth, and diplomatic messages disguised as dinner. The kitchen staff has worked for days creating edible sculptures that will disappear in minutes but be remembered for months. Your food taster, young Edgar, performs his deadly dance beside your chair with the solemnity of a priest conducting mass. Every dish must pass through his system before reaching your lips, transforming him into a human shield against assassination attempts that could arrive disguised as delicacies. Edgar tastes your wine with the concentration of a scholar translating ancient texts, searching for the bitter almond scent of cyanide or the metallic tang of arsenic that medieval poisoners favour. Conversation flows around the table like a river carrying both nourishment and filth. Impossible to separate the beneficial from the dangerous. Duke Robert regales the assembly with hunting stories that contain coded discussions about border disputes, while Countess Margaret's gossip about court marriages reveals intelligence about territorial alliances that could reshape the political landscape. You learn to listen with 3 different ears, one for entertainment, one for information, and one for threats. The entertainment begins with musicians whose songs carry messages more complex than their melodies suggest. The ballad about a faithful knight's tragic death is actually commentary on last month's execution of Lord Geoffrey for treason. The romantic song about star-crossed lovers contains detailed intelligence about marriage negotiations between rival kingdoms. Even the instrumental pieces communicate through their choices. Playing French compositions suggests diplomatic overtures toward Paris, while Germanic melodies imply military preparations along eastern borders. Master Ralph the Fool earned his position through wit sharp enough to cut throats, while maintaining the pretense of harmless entertainment. His jokes about corrupt tax collectors target specific nobles with surgical precision, while his riddles pose questions that serious political discussions cannot address directly. Why does a prince's crown weigh more at night than during the day? He asks with a grin that suggests he knows uncomfortable answers. Medieval fools serve as unofficial opposition parties, speaking truths that would cost anyone else their heads. The wine flows freely, though you've learned that medieval drinking requires diplomatic skills alongside alcohol tolerance. Accepting toasts from certain nobles implies political agreements, while refusing drinks can spark conflicts that escalate into blood feuds. Your wine steward monitors consumption levels with the vigilance of a battlefield commander, because drunk princes make decisions that sober kingdoms regret for generations. The goblet in your hand weighs more than gold. It carries the potential for both celebration and catastrophe. Lady Catherine approaches during the second course with conversation that sparkles like her jewellery while concealing intelligence-gathering operations that would impress professional spies. Her questions about your morning studies probe your knowledge of military strategy, while her compliments about your appearance fish for information about upcoming diplomatic missions that might require impressive attire. You find yourself simultaneously charmed by her wit and terrified by her competence at extracting secrets through seemingly innocent flirtation. The feast's political undercurrents become visible as the evening progresses, and wine loosens carefully guarded tongues. Lord Edmund's seemingly casual mention of grain shortages in his territory is actually a request for financial assistance disguised as dinner conversation. Baron Geoffrey's story about troublesome bandits on his lands is really an appeal for military support against enemies he cannot identify publicly. Every anecdote contains hidden agendas that transform social gathering into covert negotiation sessions. Historians still argue whether medieval feast halls were primarily social venues or intelligence networks, but the distinction seems academic when every conversation could determine your kingdom's future. The nobleman complimenting your father's recent tax policies might be genuinely supportive or subtly threatening rebellion. The lady praising your mother's charitable works could be building alliance bridges or gathering information about royal finances. Paranoia becomes a survival skill when friendly faces hide hostile intentions. The gift exchange that accompanies formal feasts creates another layer of diplomatic complexity, where precious objects carry messages more valuable than their material worth. Duke Robert presents your father with a jewelled dagger that suggests either friendship or threat, depending on interpretation. Your mother receives silk scarves from distant kingdoms that could represent trade opportunities or intelligence from foreign courts. Even your own gifts require careful consideration. Too valuable suggests weakness through overpayment, while too modest implies disrespect that could trigger conflicts. Dancing provides blessed relief from conversational minefields, though even choreographed entertainment carries political weight in medieval contexts. Your choice of dancing partners communicates diplomatic positions to assembled nobles who analyse every step for hidden meanings. Leading Lady Margaret in the opening dance demonstrates respect for her family's influence, while avoiding Lord Aldrich's daughter sends messages about marriage negotiations that haven't reached formal proposal stages. The evening's climax arrives with your father's toast, a carefully crafted speech that acknowledges important guests while avoiding commitments that could prove problematic later. His words praise past alliances without promising future support. Acknowledge recent victories without claiming excessive credit, and express hopes for continued peace while preparing for probable wars. You study his technique like a masterclass in diplomatic rhetoric, knowing that someday you'll deliver similar speeches to similar audiences who will analyse your every word for weakness or opportunity. As the feast winds toward its conclusion and nobles begin calculating exit strategies that avoid appearing either eager to leave or reluctant to go, you reflect on lessons learned through hours of orchestrated socialization. Medieval feast halls aren't restaurants. There are laboratories where human nature's political elements combine in ways that can create either golden alliances or explosive conflicts. Every meal's a test, every conversation is an examination, and every smile could be either salvation or suicide. The great hall empties slowly as guests depart carrying full stomachs and fuller heads packed with intelligence gathered through an evening of carefully choreographed social warfare. You remain until protocol permits your withdrawal, knowing that tomorrow will bring the analysis of tonight's interactions by advisors who missed nothing and forgot less. Feast hall dynamics may seem like elaborate theatre, but the consequences of poor performances are measured in lives lost and kingdoms fallen. The morning arrives with correspondence that seals your romantic fate before you've even finished breaking your fast. Diplomatic pouches bearing foreign seals rest on your writing desk like beautiful snakes, each one containing marriage proposals that treat your heart like a commodity to be traded for territorial advantages. Your chamberlain, Master Geoffrey, reads the documents with the solemnity of a priest preparing sacred texts, though these particular scriptures deal with earthly power rather than heavenly salvation. The French delegation proposes Princess Isabel, he announces while unfurling a parchment decorated with enough gold leaf to fund a small crusade. The portrait accompanying her proposal shows a young woman with intelligent eyes and a diplomatic smile, though you've learned that medieval portraiture often prioritizes political messaging over photographic accuracy. Her dowry includes 3 coastal provinces and trading rights that would make your father's treasury sing with joy. But her family's reputation for producing strong-willed wives makes the marriage counsellors nervous. Princess Isabel's credentials read like a diplomatic resume designed to impress while concealing potential complications. She speaks 4 languages fluently, plays the lute with professional competence, and allegedly possesses enough mathematical skill to manage royal finances without bankrupting the kingdom. However, whispered intelligence reports suggest she's also inherited her grandmother's tendency toward political independence and her mother's gift for making enemies out of former allies. Marrying Princess Isabel would gain you a brilliant partner while potentially acquiring a beautiful headache that lasts for decades. The Spanish proposal arrives with ceremony that befits its sender's imperial ambitions. Princess Maria Theresa comes with bloodlines that trace back to Charlemagne and forward to potential claims on territories that currently belong to your neighbours. Her portrait depicts classical beauty enhanced by jewellery worth more than most kingdoms' annual revenues, while her letters demonstrate education that rivals university scholars. The match would elevate your family's status while creating alliance possibilities that could reshape European politics for generations. Yet Master Geoffrey's expression suggests complications that the official proposal carefully omits. Her Highness brings considerable personality. He observes with diplomatic delicacy that barely conceals deeper concerns. Intelligence reports describe Princess Maria Theresa as intellectually gifted but temperamentally challenging, possessed of opinions about governance that don't always align with traditional expectations about royal wives. Her previous engagement ended mysteriously after her intended groom decided monastic life offered better survival prospects than marriage to Spanish royalty. The English delegation's proposal emphasises practical advantages over romantic possibilities, approaching marriage with the same business-like efficiency they bring to wool trading and territorial conquest. Lady Margaret Plantagenet offers bloodlines that would legitimise claims to English territories your grandfather lost in unfortunate military adventures. Her dowry includes silver mines and sheep farms that generate steady income rather than exciting political possibilities, appealing to advisors who prefer predictable profits over dramatic territorial expansion. Lady Margaret's personal qualities suggest compatibility that other proposals lack. Her letters demonstrate wit without threatening intellectual competition, piety without excessive religious enthusiasm, and political awareness without dangerous ambition. The English match would provide domestic tranquility and financial stability while offering fewer opportunities for the kind of international complications that turn royal marriages into diplomatic disasters. Some princes would consider such predictability boring, but you're learning that boring marriages often outlast exciting ones. The papal intervention arrives precisely when these negotiations reach critical stages, because Vatican timing remains as precise as clockwork and twice as politically motivated. His Holiness expresses interest in your marital choices with the kind of divine concern that usually masks very earthly ambitions. The Pope's preferred candidate. Princess Catherine of Naples brings papal approval and religious legitimacy that would strengthen your family's relationship with the Church while potentially weakening ties to Protestant territories. Princess Catherine's qualifications include education in canonical law and theological studies that would make her valuable for navigating religious disputes that constantly threaten medieval peace. Her convent training has prepared her for the kind of pious public life that papal approval requires, while her noble birth ensures she understands political necessities that pure religious education might ignore. However, her deep spiritual convictions might conflict with the morally ambiguous decisions that effective governance sometimes demands. Your mother enters these negotiations with opinions that carry dynastic weight alongside maternal affection. Queen Eleanor scrutinises each proposal with eyes that have witnessed 3 decades of royal marriage politics, evaluating potential daughters-in-law through criteria that blend personal preference with strategic calculation. Her own arranged marriage to your father has evolved into genuine partnership, giving her insights into which qualities contribute to successful royal unions versus those that create beautiful disasters. Marriage is warfare conducted through diplomacy, she observes while reviewing the Spanish proposal's financial terms. Choose a partner who can fight beside you rather than against you. Because royal marriage provides enemies with permanent ambassadors inside your most intimate councils, her advice carries weight earned through navigating court politics, while maintaining marriage stability that many royal couples never achieve. The tournament announcements that accompany these marriage negotiations add another layer of complexity to romantic diplomacy. Several proposed brides plan to attend upcoming festivities, transforming what should be military exhibitions into marriage auditions where your performance with sword and lance influences hearts alongside political calculations. Medieval romance may be conducted through diplomatic correspondence, but final decisions often depend on personal meetings that can either confirm or destroy carefully negotiated agreements. Historians still argue whether medieval royal marriages were primarily political arrangements or whether personal attraction played larger roles than official documents suggest. The love letters that survive from royal couples demonstrate genuine affection that developed despite arranged beginnings, while other correspondence reveals marriages that remained strategic partnerships throughout their duration. Your own parents' relationship suggests that political necessity and personal happiness aren't mutually exclusive, though achieving both requires considerable luck alongside careful partner selection. The financial negotiations accompanying marriage proposals reveal the economic realities underlying romantic diplomacy. Dowry calculations, inheritance rights, and territorial transfers create mathematical equations where your future happiness is balanced against kingdom prosperity. Some proposals offer immediate financial relief through substantial dowries, while others promise long-term territorial expansion that could benefit future generations at the expense of current liquidity. Master William Bowie, your father's treasurer, analyzes these proposals with the same cold precision he applies to military budgets and tax collection. His recommendations prioritize financial stability over romantic possibilities, arguing that kingdoms built on sound marriages outlast those founded on passionate attractions. However, his own bachelor status suggests either practical wisdom or personal experience that makes him skeptical about marriage's benefits under any circumstances. The intelligence reports that accompany official proposals provide fascinating glimpses into potential brides' personalities that diplomatic correspondence carefully conceals. Princess Isabel allegedly maintains private correspondence with troubadours who celebrate courtly love, suggesting romantic sensibilities that could either enhance marriage happiness or complicate political obligations. Princess Maria Theresa reportedly practices swordplay with the same enthusiasm she brings to scholarly pursuits, indicating either admirable versatility or dangerous unpredictability. Your own preferences enter these calculations with weight that varies depending on which advisor offers opinions. The romantic poets who frequent court encourage following your heart's desires, while experienced diplomats suggest that hearts change faster than treaties and prove less reliable for maintaining international peace. Your father's approach emphasizes consultation without demanding absolute obedience, recognizing that forced marriages often produce exactly the kind of domestic conflicts that weaken kingdoms from within. As evening settles over the castle, you review portraits and proposals that will determine not just your personal happiness, but your kingdom's future prosperity. The decision feels overwhelming because it encompasses romance, politics, finance, religion, and international diplomacy in ways that affect millions of people you'll never meet. Medieval marriage negotiations may begin with hearts and flowers, but they conclude with signatures on documents that reshape maps for generations to come. Dawn breaks over the royal forest with light that filters through ancient oak leaves like liquid gold, illuminating your hunting party as it assembles for what appears to be leisure, but functions as sophisticated political theatre. Your destrier snorts impatiently beneath you, its breath forming clouds in the crisp morning air, while huntsmen adjust stirrups and check weapons with the precision of soldiers preparing for battle. Medieval hunting isn't simple recreation, it's military training disguised as sport, diplomatic negotiation conducted through shared adventure, and social hierarchy displayed through ritualized violence against woodland creatures who never signed up for their starring roles. Master Huntsman Richard approaches with tracking reports delivered in whispers that sound more like military intelligence briefings than discussions about wildlife movements. The great stag has been sighted near Devil's Brook, Your Highness. He reports while his weathered face suggests he's seen enough royal hunts to know that human prey often proves more dangerous than four-legged quarry. Though Lord Edmund's men have been tracking the same beast since yesterday, the territorial implications aren't lost on anyone. Two hunting parties pursuing the same prize creates potential for conflicts that could escalate beyond forest boundaries. Your hunting companions represent a carefully curated selection of political necessities and personal preferences, each invitation calculated to advance diplomatic objectives while maintaining the pretense of casual entertainment. Duke Robert rides beside you with the easy confidence of someone who's survived both battlefield charges and court intrigue, his presence lending legitimacy to your leadership while his conversation probes your opinions on territorial disputes that haven't yet reached formal negotiation stages. Every joke he shares contains intelligence gathering. Every compliment he offers tests your political sophistication. The pack of hunting hounds that bounds ahead through morning mist represents breeding programs that consume fortunes while producing animals worth more than peasant families could earn in lifetimes. These aren't mere dogs, they're living symbols of royal power. Their bloodlines as carefully maintained as those of noble houses. Each hound has been trained to specific prey and hunting conditions, their abilities honed through methods that would impress modern military dog handlers. The lead dog, a massive beast named Charlemagne, bears scars from previous encounters with wild boar that suggest hunting isn't always the one-sided affair that troubadour songs suggest. Lady Catherine has convinced protocol officers to permit her participation in today's expedition, transforming what should have been masculine bonding into co-educational political manoeuvring. She rides side-saddle with grace that conceals the considerable skill required to maintain balance during forest chases while wearing court dress designed more for appearance than practicality. Her presence adds complexity to every interaction, as nobles compete for her attention while you navigate expectations about appropriate behaviour toward potential marriage candidates during activities that could prove lethal for unwary participants. The forest itself becomes a character in today's drama, its ancient trees witnessing centuries of royal hunts that shaped political fortunes alongside wildlife populations. These woods have seen kings crowned and pretenders killed, alliances forged through shared danger, and marriages arranged during moments of vulnerability when normal court masks slip away. The hunting trails you follow today were carved by your ancestors' horses, creating pathways through wilderness that mirror the political routes your family has navigated through equally treacherous terrain. Your falcon, a magnificent peregrine named Aristotle, perches on your gloved fist with the regal bearing of a creature that knows its worth exceeds most nobles' annual incomes. Medieval falconry represents the pinnacle of hunting sophistication, requiring partnership between human and raptor that transcends simple master-servant relationships. Training a hunting falcon takes years of patient work that builds trust through daily interaction, creating bonds that medieval nobles often valued more highly than their relationships with human companions. The irony isn't lost on you that your most reliable hunting partner is a creature that could disappear into the sky at any moment but chooses to return to your fist. The horn blast that signals quarry sighted transforms leisurely, forest ride into controlled chaos, as horses surge forward through undergrowth that threatens to unseat unwary riders. Your years of mounted combat training prove invaluable as you navigate fallen logs and low branches while maintaining formation with companions whose own horsemanship varies dramatically. Lord Edmund demonstrates riding skills that suggest extensive military experience, while Baron Geoffrey's technique indicates more familiarity with accounting ledgers than cavalry charges. The great stag that emerges from morning shadows represents everything magnificent and doomed about medieval nobility. Beautiful scouts, powerful, and ultimately vulnerable to coordinated attacks by predators who hunt in packs. Its antlers spread like crown jewels carved from bone, while its dark eyes hold intelligence that seems to understand its role in today's lethal pageant. For a moment, the entire hunting party pauses in appreciation of natural majesty that makes human pretension seem small by comparison. The chase that follows tests every rider's courage and competence as the stag leads you through terrain that challenges both horse and human endurance. Stream crossings that seemed manageable during leisurely morning rides become obstacles that separate skilled hunters from those who participate primarily for social appearances. You guide your destrier through water that rises to its belly while maintaining balance, and pursuing prey that knows every rock and root in territory it's called home for years longer than you've been alive. Lady Catherine's performance during the Sidhe earns grudging respect from companions who initially viewed her participation as court frivolity. Her riding demonstrates skills that suggest extensive training beyond what most noble ladies receive, while her composure during dangerous moments indicates either exceptional bravery or concerning recklessness. When her horse stumbles during a particularly treacherous slope crossing, she recovers with athletic grace that transforms potential disaster into impressive display of horsemanship that will be discussed in court for weeks. The kill itself, Tamui, when it finally comes, carries ceremony that elevates animal death into sacred ritual. Your arrow finds its mark with precision that years of archery practice have made possible, bringing down prey that represents both triumph and tragedy. The great stag falls with dignity that shames some human deaths you've witnessed, its final moments marked by respect that medieval hunting culture demands toward worthy opponents. Master huntsman Richard performs the traditional field dressing with reverence that borders on religious observances, but hunting's social functions extend far beyond the actual pursuit and killing of game. During rest stops beside forest streams, conversations flow with freedom impossible within castle walls where every word faces scrutiny from hostile ears. Duke Robert shares intelligence about border movements that formal diplomatic channels haven't yet addressed, while Lord Edmund discusses tax collection difficulties that could indicate broader rebellious sentiments among his territory's inhabitants. The forest provides natural confession booth where political secrets exchange hands alongside hunting stories. The feast that follows successful hunt transforms forest clearing into outdoor banquet hall, where social hierarchies temporarily relax while maintaining underlying power structures. You dine on venison that hours ago was running free through woodland paths, its transformation from living creature to royal meal representing cycles of life and death that define medieval existence. The shared danger of the hunt creates temporary bonds between participants who might be plotting against each other back at court. Though these friendships rarely survive return to castle politics. Historians still argue whether medieval hunting culture primarily served military training purposes or social bonding functions, but participants experience both benefits simultaneously. The skills you develop tracking prey through difficult terrain translate directly to battlefield reconnaissance, while the alliances you forge during shared adventures strengthen political networks that could prove crucial during future conflicts. Physical courage demonstrated during dangerous hunts establishes credentials that purely intellectual achievements cannot match. As afternoon shadows lengthen, and the hunting party prepares to return home with trophies that will decorate castle halls and stories that will entertain court gatherings for months, you reflect on lessons learned through pursuit of woodland quarry. Hunting teaches patience, courage, and partnership while providing opportunities for political advancement that formal diplomatic occasions cannot offer. The forest may seem like a step from royal responsibilities, but it's actually another venue where those responsibilities play out through different rules that demand the same careful attention to survival that castle politics require. The castle awakens before dawn with a symphony of human activity that rivals the most complex musical compositions ever written, though this particular orchestra performs with brooms instead of instruments and measures success in cleanliness rather than applause. As Prince, you preside over a household that employs more people than some kingdoms contain, each servant filling specialized roles that interweave like threads in tapestries worth more than their annual wages combined. Managing this human machinery requires diplomatic skills that rival international negotiations, because a disgruntled cook can poison more than food, and unhappy guards can open gates to enemies alongside dawn deliveries. Your chamberlain, Master Geoffrey, approaches with ledgers that record every penny spent on household operations during the previous day, his meticulous bookkeeping revealing expenses that would stagger merchants who consider themselves wealthy. The kitchen staff consumed 4 barrels of flour, 2 sides of beef, and enough ale to float a small boat. He reports with the gravity of a general describing military casualties. These aren't mere grocery bills. They represent the economic foundation that supports royal power, because hungry servants quickly become former servants or worse. Enemy agents with intimate knowledge of castle weaknesses. The hierarchy of household positions creates social stratification more complex than anything found in universities or monasteries, with subtle gradations of authority that newcomers spend years learning to navigate successfully. At the apex stand the senior officers, your seneschal, marshal, and treasurer, whose positions carry prestige that minor nobles envy alongside salaries that support comfortable lifestyles. These men wield power that extends far beyond their official duties, serving as intermediaries between royal family and common servants, while managing information flows that could determine kingdom stability. Below them stretch dozens of specialized positions that sound like characters from elaborate fairy tales, but perform functions essential to medieval royal life. Your cupbearer tastes every liquid that passes your lips, transforming beverage service into life or death responsibility that ages young men prematurely. The keeper of your wardrobe maintains clothing collections worth more than most castles, ensuring that every garment sends appropriate political messages while remaining functionally suitable for whatever activities your day demands. Your personal chaplain ministers to spiritual needs, while monitoring religious orthodoxy among staff members who might harbour dangerous theological opinions. The kitchen operates like military organisation commanded by Master Chef Henri, whose authority over culinary operations rivals that of battlefield generals. His staff includes specialists whose skills require years to master, sauce cooks who guard secret recipes like state secrets, pastry chefs whose sugar sculptures rival architectural achievements, and meat carvers whose knife work demonstrates artistry that makes sculptors weep with envy. These aren't mere food preparers. but artists whose creations communicate royal status through edible media that disappears within hours but creates impressions lasting for years. Your personal servants occupy positions of extraordinary trust that come with corresponding dangers, because proximity to royalty provides opportunities for both advancement and assassination. Your body servant knows your physical condition better than court physicians, his daily observations potentially revealing information that enemies would kill to obtain. The page who tends your writing materials could read correspondence that determines international policy, while the squire who maintains your weapons might discover military preparations that hostile nations desperately want to learn. The stable represents its own kingdom within your larger domain, ruled by Master Groom William, whose expertise with horses exceeds most nobles' understanding of human nature. His domain includes dozens of animals worth more than peasant villages. Your destrier alone cost enough gold to purchase entire farms, while his staff of grooms, stable boys, and farriers maintain these living investments with care that borders on worship. Medieval warfare depends absolutely on horse quality, making stable management a military necessity disguised as agricultural activity. Female servants navigate additional complexities that male staff members never face, their positions complicated by social expectations that limit advancement opportunities while increasing vulnerability to exploitation. Your mother's ladies-in-waiting occupy prestigious positions that provide access to power centres while requiring diplomatic skills that would challenge ambassadors. These women manage household affairs that directly impact kingdom operations, their efficiency determining whether royal life functions smoothly or dissolves into expensive chaos. The laundry operations alone require management skills that would impress modern corporate executives. With washing schedules coordinated to ensure clean linens appear precisely when needed, while dirty materials disappear before they can embarrass royal dignity. Medieval clothing cleaning involves processes more complex than modern dry cleaning, with specialized techniques for different fabrics and stains that range from wine spills to battle damage. The head laundress commands respect throughout the household because everyone depends on her expertise to maintain appearances that political necessity demands. Security arrangements within the household create layers of protection that would satisfy modern intelligence agencies while maintaining the appearance of domestic normalcy that royal dignity requires. Guards disguised as servants patrol areas where obvious military presence might suggest weakness or paranoia, their weapons concealed but readily accessible should assassination attempts materialize. The porter who greets visitors screens potential threats while appearing merely ceremonial, his friendly demeanor masking tactical awareness that evaluates every guest for dangerous intentions. Financial management of household operations requires mathematical skills that university scholars would envy, with budgets that balance immediate needs against long-term sustainability while accommodating unpredictable expenses that royal life generates without warning. Emergency funds must cover everything from unexpected diplomatic visits that require elaborate entertainment to sudden military mobilizations that empty treasury coffers faster than plague empties villages. Your treasurer's calculations determine whether the kingdom prospers or faces bankruptcy that weakens political stability. Training new servants represents ongoing investment in human capital that pays dividends for decades when done properly, or creates security vulnerabilities when handled carelessly. Young people seeking household positions undergo evaluation processes that examine family backgrounds, personal loyalties, and potential connections to hostile interests. The most promising candidates receive education that transforms them into valuable assets, while those who prove unreliable find themselves reassigned to positions where they can cause minimal damage to royal interests. Seasonal variations in household management create cyclical challenges that require advanced planning worthy of military campaigns. Winter preparations involve stockpiling food supplies that could sustain siege conditions while maintaining comfort levels that royal dignity demands. Spring cleaning mobilizes the entire household for projects that restore castle condition after months of winter wear, while summer expansions accommodate increased diplomatic activity that warm weather encourages. Autumn brings harvest celebrations that demonstrate royal generosity, while collecting the intelligence about kingdom prosperity. The gossip networks that permeate household operations carry information more efficiently than official communication channels, creating informal intelligence systems that royal advisors monitor carefully for political implications. Servant conversations reveal popular sentiment about royal policies, while identifying potential security threats before they mature into actual dangers. Managing these information flows requires understanding human psychology alongside practical administration, because servants who feel valued provide better intelligence than those who fear punishment for honest reporting. Historians still argue whether medieval household management was primarily economic activity or political institution, but the distinction seems academic when daily operations directly impact kingdom stability. A well-run royal household demonstrates competence that reassures subjects about their ruler's capabilities, while domestic chaos suggests administrative failures that enemies exploit for propaganda purposes. Your ability to manage hundreds of servants successfully indicates readiness to govern thousands of subjects effectively. As evening settles over the castle and household staff complete their daily routines, you review reports that document another successful day of domestic operation. The smooth functioning that visitors take for granted requires constant attention to detail that never ends and rarely receives recognition it deserves. Managing a royal household may seem less glamorous than commanding armies or negotiating treaties, but it provides foundational stability that makes all other royal activities possible. Tomorrow will bring new challenges that test your administrative skills alongside your political acumen, because kingdoms rise or fall based on their ability to manage mundane necessities alongside dramatic possibilities. The War Council convenes at dawn in the castle's Great Hall, transforming what hours earlier hosted elegant feasts into a strategic nerve centre where kingdoms rise or fall based on decisions made by sleep-deprived men studying maps that smell of ink and ambition. You take your designated place beside your father as battle-scarred veterans, and calculating advisors debate troop movements that will determine whether your subjects live as free citizens or conquered slaves. The morning light filtering through stained glass windows illuminates faces etched with the kind of experience that only comes from watching friends die for political principles that seemed more important before the killing started. Your armour weighs heavier than usual as squires help you into steel plates that cost more than most nobles' annual incomes, while providing protection that may prove inadequate against weapons designed specifically to penetrate royal defences. Each piece of metal represents hours of master craftsman labour alongside metallurgical knowledge, passed down through generations of armourers who understood that their clients' survival depended on their technical expertise. The complete ensemble transforms you from vulnerable human into medieval tank, though the psychological weight of command responsibility makes the physical burden seem trivial by comparison. Master Marshal Edmund unfurls campaign maps with the reverence of priests handling sacred relics. Though these particular documents deal with earthly conquest rather than heavenly salvation, red marks indicate enemy positions reported by scouts whose information may be accurate or deliberately misleading, depending on whether they've been captured and turned by hostile intelligence operations. Blue symbols show your own forces, though their exact strength and morale remain question marks that could determine whether confident battle plans become brilliant victories or catastrophic defeats. Duke Robert's army numbers approximately 4,000 men, announces Sir Geoffrey, while pointing to map positions with a jewelled dagger that's seen actual combat service. Though our intelligence suggests half are poorly trained conscripts who might break at first contact with professional soldiers. This assessment sparks debate among advisors who've learned that underestimating enemies proves fatal more often than overestimating them. Medieval intelligence gathering relies heavily on human sources who may provide accurate information, enemy disinformation, or simple mistakes that transform military planning into elaborate guessing games. Your first independent command involves leading the vanguard, a position that combines honour with mortality risk in proportions that make survival mathematics uncomfortable. 300 mounted knights and 500 infantry follow your banner into the territory where enemy scouts have reported your approach hours before your arrival. The responsibility feels crushing because each man riding behind you has family who expect his return alongside kingdom duties that require his service. Medieval command isn't just about tactical brilliance, it's about making life and death decisions while maintaining morale among followers who trust your judgment more than you trust it yourself. The countryside through which your forces advance shows scars from previous conflicts that illustrate warfare's impact on civilian populations who never chose involvement in noble dispute but suffer consequences regardless. Burned villages dot the landscape like blackened teeth, their charred remains testifying to strategies that target economic infrastructure alongside military objectives. The peasants you encounter flee at your army's approach, their terror suggesting that distinguishing between friendly and hostile forces becomes impossible when survival depends on avoiding all soldiers regardless of their declared allegiances. Your Destria responds to battlefield conditions with training that transforms domestic riding into combat partnership, its muscles tensing beneath you as the scent of distant smoke signals potential conflict ahead. Medieval war horses represent investments that exceed most nobles' total wealth, their breeding and training producing animals capable of charging through infantry formations while remaining controllable enough to respond to subtle commands during chaotic melees. The relationship between knight and mount requires trust that develops through years of shared training, creating bonds that often prove stronger than human friendships formed under less demanding circumstances. The enemy appears as a dark line across distant hills, their banners identifying forces whose political motivations seem less important than their immediate threat to your continued existence. Duke Robert's reputation as a competent military leader makes this confrontation potentially educational, or fatal, depending on whether your own tactical preparation proves adequate for real combat conditions. The butterflies in your stomach feel more like angry wasps as you realize that theoretical military knowledge faces its ultimate examination against opponents who grade mistakes with swords rather than harsh words. Your battle speech to assembled troops draws inspiration from classical examples that Master Guillaume forced you to memorize during educational sessions that seem tedious until this moment when inspiring subordinates becomes literally vital. Today we fight not just for victory, but for the freedom to return home to families who depend on our success. You proclaim while projecting confidence that feels more aspirational than factual. Medieval military morale depends heavily on leadership charisma, because soldiers who doubt their commander's competence rarely fight effectively, regardless of their individual courage or training quality. The charge itself unfolds like choreographed chaos, where individual heroism and tactical coordination merge into experiences that defy coherent description. Your lance finds its target with impact that travels through your entire body. the physics of mounted combat concentrating tremendous energy into steel points that punch through the armor with mathematical precision. The enemy knight who falls before your weapon becomes the first human you've killed personally. Though battlefield conditions prevent reflection on moral implications that will haunt quieter moments later. Combat reality differs dramatically from training yard exercises where opponents cooperate with predetermined scenarios rather than actively trying to kill you with creative enthusiasm. Swords that felt manageable during practice become unwieldy burdens when swung by exhausted arms against enemies who refuse to follow practice drill patterns. The mud beneath your horse's hooves consists partially of blood from fallen warriors whose academic discussions about military strategy ended permanently when theoretical knowledge met practical application under lethal conditions. Your tactical decisions during the battle's crucial moments determine outcomes that affect thousands of lives alongside your own survival prospects. Ordering cavalry reserve commitment at precisely the right moment breaks enemy morale, while premature deployment might waste forces needed for different tactical situations. Medieval battlefield command requires instantaneous decisions based on incomplete information while under stressor, levels that would challenge modern emergency room surgeons working under ideal conditions with superior medical knowledge. The victory, when it finally comes, feels less triumphant than exhausting as you survey battlefield aftermath that illustrates warfare's true costs beyond abstract casualty statistics. Dead horses lie beside fallen riders whose personal stories will never be told, while wounded survivors face recovery prospects that medieval medicine makes grimly uncertain. Your own forces celebrate success while dealing with losses that transform abstract leadership concepts into personal grief for subordinates whose trust you carried into combat situations where that trust proved either justified or fatal. Enemy prisoners require decisions that balance military necessity against chivalric ideals, because medieval warfare operates according to codes that attempt to civilize activities that remain fundamentally barbaric regardless of noble intentions. Captured knights expect ransoming opportunities that provide financial benefits, while lower-ranked prisoners face slavery or execution, depending on strategic calculations that weigh immediate utility against long-term political implications. These choices reveal leadership character in ways that peaceful decision-making never tests. The march home carries spoils that justify campaign costs while bearing wounded comrades whose injuries remind everyone that military glory comes with prices that accounting ledgers cannot fully calculate. Your own performance during battle establishes reputation that will influence future military assignments alongside political opportunities, because medieval leadership credibility depends heavily on demonstrated competence under conditions where failure means death rather than embarrassment. Historians still argue whether medieval warfare was primarily political tool or economic necessity, but participants experience both motivation simultaneously, while focused mainly on survival prospects that make theoretical discussions seem irrelevant. Your first campaign provides education that no classroom could offer, teaching lessons about human nature under extreme stress that will inform future decisions whether they involve military operations or civilian governance. The blood on your sword represents initiation into responsibilities that shape kingdoms' destinies through individual choices made during moments when reflection becomes luxury that survival circumstances cannot afford. The morning sun cast long-shadowed as across the courtyard as foreign envoys arrive with fanfare that conceals daggers behind diplomatic smiles, their elaborate processions designed to intimidate while appearing merely ceremonial. You stand beside your father on steps worn smooth by centuries of similar receptions, your ceremonial robes communicating messages about wealth and power to visitors whose own attire broadcasts equally calculated signals. Today's diplomatic mission involves negotiations that could prevent wars or spark conflicts that consume kingdoms, making every gesture and word a potential catalyst for either peace or devastation. The French delegation approaches with precision that military formations would envy, their ambassadors' credentials carried on silk cushions as if they were holy relics rather than political documents. Count Philippe d'Anjou presents letters from his king with ceremony that transforms simple message delivery into sacred ritual. Though you've learned that diplomatic pageantry often masks hostile intentions behind elaborate courtesy, his smile radiates warmth that never reaches his calculating eyes. An expression you've seen on courtiers who subsequently attempted assassination through more direct methods. "Your Majesty honours us with this audience," Count Philippe declares while executing a bow that demonstrates perfect technique alongside barely concealed condescension. His words carry the musical cadence of educated French nobility. Though you detect subtle emphasis on certain phrases that suggest hidden meanings, your tutors warned you to expect from professional diplomats. Medieval diplomatic language operates like coded poetry where metaphors disguise threats and compliments contain ultimatums that could justify military action if misinterpreted or ignored. The treaty proposals that emerge from elaborately decorated scroll cases read like legal documents written by scholars who understand that single-word choices can determine whether kingdoms prosper or burn. Each clause has been crafted to provide maximum advantage to French interests, while appearing reasonable enough to avoid immediate rejection, creating agreements that seem beneficial until careful analysis reveals disadvantageous implications hidden within complex legal terminology. Your advisors will spend weeks examining these documents for traps that could surrender territorial rights or create military obligations your kingdom cannot fulfill. The Spanish envoys arrive with different theatrical flair, their procession emphasizing imperial grandeur over French diplomatic subtlety. Don Carlos de Mendoza represents the interests that span continents, his authority extending to territories where Spanish gold finances armies that dwarf your kingdom's entire population. His proposals involve commercial agreements that could bring prosperity through trade relationships, though the financial terms suggest economic domination disguised as mutually beneficial partnership arrangements that seem designed to transform your realm into Spanish satellite territory. His Catholic Majesty seeks friendship with all Christian princes, Don Carlos announces, while his retinue displays wealth that makes your treasury seem like child's piggy bank. The religious terminology isn't coincidental. Spanish diplomacy consistently frames political objectives as spiritual necessities, using papal authority to justify territorial expansion that secular motivations might make more difficult to achieve. You're learning that medieval international relations often disguise conquest as religious duty, making resistance appear both politically unwise and spiritually dangerous. The English delegation takes an entirely different approach, their ambassador arriving with merchant practicality that cuts through ceremonial nonsense to address immediate economic interests. Sir William Pembroke represents trading relationships that could provide mutual benefits without the territorial complications that French and Spanish proposals contain. Though his straightforward manner may conceal British cunning that operates through commercial channels rather than military threats, English diplomatic style emphasizes practical advantages over abstract principles, appealing to advisors who prefer concrete benefits to theoretical political philosophies. Your role in these negotiations requires careful balance between appearing competent enough to eventually inherit diplomatic responsibilities while avoiding premature assumption of authority that might undermine your father's current leadership position. You offer observations that demonstrate intelligence without challenging experienced diplomats whose expertise exceeds your knowledge, asking questions that gather information while revealing minimal details about your kingdom's actual military capabilities or financial resources. Medieval diplomatic training teaches princes to appear informed while remaining mysterious about topics that enemies could exploit. The afternoon sessions move beyond formal presentations into detailed negotiations where real diplomatic work occurs through conversations that seem casual but determine international relationships for generations. Count Philippe probes your opinions about territorial disputes that haven't reached public discussion stages, fishing for intelligence about military preparations that French strategic planning requires. His seemingly innocent questions about harvest conditions actually seek information about your kingdom's ability to sustain sieges or fund extended military campaigns. Private dinner arrangements provide opportunities for more intimate diplomatic discussions where alcohol loosens tongues that formal sessions keep carefully guarded. The wine selection becomes part of negotiation strategy, with vintage choices communicating messages about respect levels alongside attempts to impair judgment that could lead to advantageous concessions. You've been trained to maintain sobriety during these sessions while appearing to match your guests' consumption, because diplomatic drinking requires professional skills that could determine kingdom survival. The gift exchanges that accompany formal negotiations create another layer of international communication where precious objects carry meanings more valuable than their material worth. The jeweled dagger that Count Philippe presents could represent either friendship or subtle threat, depending on interpretation that will influence your response to future French proposals. Your own gifts require equal consideration because excessive generosity might suggest weakness, while inadequate offerings could imply disrespect that justifies hostile reactions. Evening entertainment transforms diplomatic discussions into cultural competitions, where each delegation attempts to demonstrate superior civilization through artistic presentations that mask intelligence-gathering operations. The French musicians perform songs that contain coded references to military alliance possibilities, while Spanish dancers execute routines that communicate information about troop movements through choreographed symbolism. You're learning that medieval diplomacy extends far beyond formal negotiations into every aspect of international interaction. The intelligence reports that accompany these diplomatic visits reveal information that official presentations carefully omit, painting more accurate pictures of foreign intentions than ceremonial courtesy provides. Your spymaster's sources suggest that French proposals mask preparation for territorial expansion that could threaten your eastern borders, while Spanish offers might represent preliminary steps toward economic colonization that gradually transfers sovereignty to Madrid without requiring military conquest. English practicality may conceal longer-term strategies that achieve dominance through commercial dependency rather than political submission. Night meetings conducted in supposedly secure chambers provide venues for discussions that official diplomatic records never acknowledge, where real negotiations occur through conversations that could justify execution charges if discovered by hostile intelligence services. These sessions reveal the gap between public diplomatic positions and private strategic intentions, offering insights into actual foreign policy objectives that ceremonial presentations deliberately obscure through layers of diplomatic protocol. Your father's negotiation techniques demonstrate skills that decades of international relations have refined into instinctive responses that balance aggression with accommodation while maintaining kingdom independence. His ability to extract concessions while appearing to offer reciprocal benefits illustrates diplomatic artistry that makes battlefield tactics seem straightforward by comparison. You study his methods like musical scores that require perfect timing alongside emotional nuance to achieve desired political harmonies. The treaty drafts that emerge from these negotiations represent compromise documents that satisfy nobody completely, while providing everyone sufficient benefits to justify domestic political costs that international agreements always require. Medieval diplomatic success isn't measured by total victory, but by arrangements that prevent immediate conflicts, while creating opportunities for future advancement when circumstances become more favourable for aggressive action. Historians still argue whether medieval diplomacy primarily served peaceful conflict resolution or merely delayed inevitable warfare while providing intelligence-gathering opportunities. But participants pursue both objectives simultaneously. Your diplomatic education reveals international relations as continuous competition conducted through legal frameworks rather than military operations. Though the ultimate stakes remain identical whether conflicts are resolved through negotiations or decided through combat, as foreign delegations prepare to depart with preliminary agreements that require domestic ratification before becoming binding international law, you reflect on lessons learned through watching professional diplomats pursue national interests through civilized discourse. Diplomatic missions may appear more pleasant than military campaigns, but they require skills that are equally demanding and potentially more dangerous, because failure in negotiations often leads directly to warfare where survival rates prove less favourable than treaty conference statistics. The treasury chamber deep within the castle's stone heart feels like a temple to golden gods, its iron-bound chests and ledger books recording wealth that most subjects never see while documenting expenses that could bankrupt kingdoms faster than military defeats. You descend worn stone steps alongside Master Treasurer William, whose pallid complexion suggests years spent in chambers where sunlight never penetrates, but whose mathematical precision has kept your family's finances stable through economic storms that toppled neighbouring dynasties. The keys he carries could unlock vaults or economic disasters, depending on spending decisions that balance immediate needs against long-term survival. The morning's first task involves reviewing tax collection reports from provincial administrators whose honesty varies as dramatically as their competence, creating financial intelligence that requires careful interpretation alongside mathematical analysis. Sir Geoffrey's accounts from the Northern Territories show revenues that seem suspiciously round numbers, suggesting either remarkable coincidence or creative accounting, designed to conceal embezzlement that could fund rebellions alongside personal luxury. Medieval tax collection operates more like organised extortion than systematic revenue generation, with collectors keeping percentages that reward efficiency while encouraging corruption. The wool merchants petition for reduced tariffs. Master William announces while unfurling documents that smell of sheep and desperation. Though their complaints about hardship seem inconsistent with their ability to afford gold-threaded petitions, his dry observation illustrates the constant tension between taxing subjects enough to fund kingdom operations while avoiding levies so excessive that productive citizens relocate to territories offering better fiscal treatment. Medieval economics operates on principles that modern economists would recognize. People respond to incentives, capital flows toward favourable conditions, and excessive taxation eventually destroys its own revenue base. The military budget consumes treasury resources faster than hungry dragons devour livestock, with weapons, armour, and horse maintenance creating expenses that never decrease regardless of whether actual warfare occurs. Your personal equipment alone costs enough to purchase entire villages, while maintaining professional soldiers requires salaries that compete with skilled craftsmen's earnings. The mathematics become truly terrifying when calculating expenses for full military mobilization that could require feeding, equipping and paying thousands of men for campaigns lasting months under conditions where supply lines determine victory more often than tactical brilliance. Castle maintenance represents another financial drain that appears endless, because medieval construction requires constant attention to prevent stone fortifications from becoming expensive ruins that provide shelter for bats rather than protection against enemies. Master Mason Robert presents estimates for repairs that make military budgets seem reasonable by comparison. His calculations including everything from roof replacement to drainage improvements that prevent foundations from washing away during spring floods. The irony isn't lost that defensive structures designed to protect wealth consume resources so rapidly they threaten economic security they're meant to preserve. Your education into royal finances reveals economic complexity that university scholars rarely comprehend, because theoretical knowledge differs dramatically from practical responsibility for keeping kingdoms solvent while maintaining political stability. The ledger books that record daily expenses read like adventure novels where heroes battle insolvency instead of dragons, their victories measured in balanced budgets rather than rescued princesses. Every expenditure decision creates ripple effects throughout the kingdom's economy, making financial management as strategically important as military planning. The grain reserves that occupy entire warehouse complexes represent insurance policies against famines that could spark rebellions faster than foreign invasions, their management requiring agricultural knowledge alongside economic expertise. Medieval food security depends on accurately predicting harvest yields, while maintaining storage facilities that prevent spoilage from destroying investments in survival. The calculations become life and death mathematics where miscalculations lead to starvation that weakens military capabilities while strengthening enemies who offer hungry subjects alternative governance arrangements. Trade negotiations with foreign merchants transform economic discussions into diplomatic chess games, where commercial agreements create political obligations that could determine future alliance structures. The Flemish cloth dealers seeking exclusive trading rights offer immediate revenue increases in exchange for market access that might disadvantage domestic textile producers whose unemployment could destabilize regional economies. Medieval international commerce operates according to principles that blend economics with politics in ways that make every business decision a strategic choice with military implications. The Royal Mint represents technological marvel that transforms precious metals into political statements. Its master craftsmen, creating coins that communicate royal authority through artistic designs that illiterate subjects can interpret instinctively. Each coin bearing your family's symbols declares governmental legitimacy while providing economic utility that makes taxation more efficient than barter systems that preceded monetary economies. However, maintaining currency integrity requires preventing counterfeiting operations that could destroy public confidence in royal money, while enriching criminals who understand medieval economics better than law enforcement agencies. Your marriage dowry negotiations involve financial calculations that dwarf military budgets, while creating economic obligations that extend far beyond wedding ceremonies into dynastic commitments lasting generations. Princess Isabella's proposed dowry includes territorial rights worth more than your kingdom's annual revenues alongside trade privileges that could revolutionize economic relationships with neighboring realms. The mathematics of royal marriage make every romantic decision an economic treaty that determines whether future generations inherit prosperity or debt that destroys political independence. Construction projects authorized by your father demonstrate medieval engineering capabilities alongside financial recklessness that threatens treasury stability for short-term political advantages. The new cathedral rising beside the castle represents architectural achievement that will inspire subjects for centuries, while consuming resources that could fund military campaigns or infrastructure improvements with more practical benefits. Medieval rulers constantly balanced spectacular projects that demonstrate power against practical expenditures that maintain actual governance capabilities. The Jewish moneylenders who discreetly visit the treasury represent economic relationships that medieval Christianity officially condemns while practically requiring for financial survival. Master Abraham's lending terms seem reasonable until careful analysis reveals interest calculations that could transfer kingdom ownership to creditors who understand compound mathematics better than royal advisors educated in classical literature rather than commercial arithmetic. Medieval banking operates in legal grey areas where religious prohibition meets economic necessity, creating opportunities for both financial salvation and complete economic catastrophe. Emergency fund management requires predicting unpredictable crises that could drain royal resources without warning, while maintaining reserves sufficient for responding to threats that range from natural disasters to military invasions. The secret vaults hidden throughout the castle contain gold and silver that represent final insurance against catastrophic losses, though their locations must remain concealed from enemies who could finance revolution using royal wealth stolen during successful castle assaults. Medieval emergency planning involves pessimistic assumptions about human nature, alongside realistic assessments of political stability that prove temporary under optimal conditions. Taxation policy decisions affect every subject's daily life while determining kingdom survival through revenue generation that must balance efficiency with fairness to prevent rebellions that cost more than tax increases generate. The recent levy increases necessary for military modernization have sparked complaints that suggest popular patience with royal financial demands approaches dangerous limits where political stability becomes more valuable than additional revenue. Medieval fiscal policy operates within constraints created by subjects' willingness to accept governmental authority that depends partly on economic satisfaction levels. The artistic patronage that consumes significant royal resources serves political purposes that extend beyond aesthetic appreciation into cultural diplomacy that influences international reputation alongside domestic morale. The court musicians, whose salaries exceed knights' pay, create entertainment that demonstrates royal sophistication, while providing venues for political messaging that advances kingdom interests through cultural rather than military means. Medieval arts funding represents investment in soft power projection that achieves political objectives through beauty rather than violence. As evening settles over treasury chambers where golden coins reflect candlelight like metallic stars, you contemplate financial responsibilities that will someday transfer to your shoulders alongside political authority that depends on economic competence as much as military skill. Royal finances may seem less glamorous than battlefield glory or diplomatic intrigue, but kingdoms survive through bookkeeping accuracy more often than heroic adventures that troubadour songs celebrate. Tomorrow will bring new financial challenges that test mathematical skills alongside political judgment, because medieval rulership ultimately depends on maintaining economic foundations that support all other governmental activities. Historians still argue whether medieval kingdoms succeeded primarily through military prowess or financial management, but your treasury education suggests both capabilities prove essential for long-term dynastic survival. The ledger books may contain less dramatic stories than battle chronicles, but their numbers determine whether kingdoms prosper or collapse under fiscal pressures that prove more destructive than enemy armies when mismanaged by rulers who prioritize glory over accounting accuracy. The weight of dynastic expectation settles around your shoulders like a leaden cloak as you kneel in the castle's private chapel, where generations of your ancestors have wrestled with pressures to produce errors who could continue bloodlines that stretch back through centuries of conquest, compromise, and carefully arranged marriages. The morning light filtering through stained glass windows illuminates prayer books whose margins contain desperate petitions from previous princes, who understood that royal potency determines political stability more directly than military victory or economic prosperity. Your future depends not just on surviving battles or negotiating treaties, but on producing children who can inherit responsibilities that grow heavier with each passing generation. Brother Augustine's discreet counsel about marital duties combines theological instruction with a practical advice that would scandalize monastery libraries while addressing realities that determine kingdom survival. His discussions of dynastic obligations employ euphemisms that dance around biological necessities like courtiers avoiding dangerous political topics, though his meaning penetrates diplomatic language with uncomfortable clarity. Medieval royal marriage serves purposes that extend far beyond personal happiness into strategic breeding programs designed to produce heirs who inherit both political authority and genetic advantages that support effective governance. Your mother's private conversations reveal feminine perspectives on succession pressures that male advisors rarely acknowledge. Her experience providing insights into challenges that await royal wives, whose primary obligation involves converting romantic affection into political insurance through pregnancy that carries risks, measuring life against dynastic necessity. Queen Eleanor's frank discussions about childbirth dangers that claimed previous generations of royal mothers illustrate stakes that make battlefield mortality seem like pleasant gambling by comparison. Medieval obstetrics operates according to principles that combine superstition with practical knowledge, while offering survival rates that make royal pregnancy a form of state-sanctioned Russian roulette. The court physicians who examine your health with clinical thoroughness that reduces royal dignity to medical specimens speak in Latin phrases that conceal their assessments of reproductive potential alongside general fitness for duties that extend beyond producing heirs into maintaining physical capabilities required for military leadership. Their recommendations involve dietary modifications, eczema regimens, and lifestyle adjustments designed to optimize fertility while maintaining strength necessary for activities that could prove fatal if physical conditioning proves inadequate during critical moments when royal survival depends on personal combat effectiveness. Marriage negotiations intensify as your 18th birthday approaches, transforming various diplomatic courtship into urgent strategic planning that evaluates potential brides according to criteria that blend romantic possibility with breeding potential, measured through family histories that track hereditary traits across generations of noble genealogy. Princess Isabella's medical examination reports discuss hip measurements alongside intellectual capabilities, because medieval royal marriage requires wives who can survive childbirth while providing heirs, intelligent enough to rule effectively when political inheritance transfers power to new generations. The pressure from your father's advisors grows daily as they calculate actuarial tables that measure dynastic survival against statistical probabilities derived from historical precedent involving royal families whose political extinction resulted from succession failures rather than military defeats. Master William presents demographic analyses with the enthusiasm of undertakers discussing funeral arrangements, his charts demonstrating how kingdoms without clear succession often dissolve into civil wars that benefit enemy nations while destroying centuries of careful political development. Medieval dynasty maintenance operates according to mathematical principles that make biological reproduction a matter of national security. Your uncle's tragic example haunts these discussions like ghostly reminder of succession dangers that lurk within royal families alongside external threats that dominate public attention. Prince Edward's death during hunting accident eliminated your father's spare heir. concentrating dynastic survival pressure onto your shoulders while creating vulnerability that hostile neighbours monitor carefully for exploitation opportunities. The accident's suspicious circumstances suggest that succession crises can result from assassination attempts disguised as natural misfortune, making every royal activity potentially lethal, while emphasizing urgency of producing multiple heirs who provide insurance against targeted elimination of individual candidates. The castle's nursery chambers await occupants who exist currently only in hopeful planning, their preparation involving expenditures that rival military budgets while creating domestic environments designed to support royal childhood development under conditions that balance luxury with practical education necessary for the future governance responsibilities. Wet nurses receive screening more thorough than diplomatic candidates, because early childhood influences determine adult capabilities that affect kingdom survival through leadership quality that begins forming during infancy, when protection and nurturing establish foundations for later political effectiveness. Sibling dynamics within royal families create competition that extends beyond childhood games into adult struggles for inheritance priority that can destabilize kingdoms when succession laws fail to provide clear guidance about leadership transfer. Your younger brother's existence provides dynastic insurance while creating potential rivalry that could fragment political authority if inheritance disputes arise during future succession transitions. Medieval family relationships operate according to the principles where blood ties compete with political necessity, creating tensions that require careful management to prevent domestic conflicts that enemy nations exploit for territorial advantage. The medical knowledge available for supporting royal childbirth combines ancient wisdom with contemporary innovation, while remaining frighteningly inadequate for addressing complications that could claim both mother and child during delivery processes that determine dynastic survival alongside personal tragedy. Court physicians practice techniques that blend empirical observation with theoretical principles derived from classical texts whose accuracy varies dramatically between helpful guidance and dangerous misinformation. Medieval obstetrics operates at intersection of science and superstition, where religious faith must supplement medical expertise that acknowledges its own limitations when confronting biological processes that defy human control. Religious discussions about royal marriage emphasize spiritual dimensions of relationships that serve political purposes, with theological instruction that addresses both romantic fulfillment and dynastic obligation through doctrinal frameworks that attempt to reconcile personal happiness with public duty. Father Benedict's counselling sessions explore moral questions about arranged marriages that may lack emotional foundation, while serving essential governmental functions that affect thousands of subjects whose welfare depends on stable succession that prevent civil conflicts over political inheritance. The intelligence reports that accompany succession planning reveal foreign interest in your kingdom's dynastic stability, with enemy agents monitoring royal health alongside marriage negotiations that could affect regional power balances through alliance structures that shift according to the succession outcomes. Neighbouring rulers calculate their own strategic positions against possibilities that your death without heirs could create intervention, opportunities that justify territorial expansion disguised as succession dispute mediation. Medieval international relations operate according to principles where internal dynasty management becomes external security issue with military implications. Your betrothal ceremony approaches with inevitability that combines celebration with anxiety, because formal engagement creates political commitments that restrict future flexibility while establishing alliance structures that determine kingdom foreign policy for generations beyond your personal involvement. The elaborate preparations involve diplomatic coordination that resembles military campaign planning, with guest lists that read like international treaties alongside security arrangements that acknowledge assassination possibilities during public events that concentrate high-value targets in vulnerable ceremonial settings. The wedding planning that follows betrothal announcement transforms personal milestone into international spectacle where every detail communicates political messages to domestic subjects alongside foreign observers who analyse ceremonial choices for intelligence about kingdom priorities and alliance commitments. Your bride's dress design indicates economic prosperity, while flower selections suggest agricultural abundance that supports military capabilities through resource availability that enemies evaluate when calculating invasion feasibility during future conflict scenarios. Training for marital responsibilities involves instruction that extends beyond romantic relationship management into partnership dynamics that must balance personal affection with political cooperation required for effective joint governance of responsibilities that affect kingdom stability. Medieval royal marriage creates dual leadership structure, where coordination becomes essential for maintaining domestic authority alongside international credibility that depends on presenting unified public face while managing private disagreements that could undermine governmental effectiveness. As evening prayers echo through chapel corridors where your ancestors sought divine guidance about similar challenges, you contemplate pressures that transform personal choices into matters of state security, while recognizing that individual happiness must serve larger purposes that extend beyond romantic fulfillment into dynastic obligations that determine whether kingdoms prosper or collapse under succession crises. The weight of expectation may feel crushing, but royal bloodlines survive through accepting responsibilities that commoners never face, while finding personal satisfaction within constraints that political necessity imposes on every aspect of private life. The great hall transforms as twilight deepens into a stage where courtly entertainment masks political maneuvering with performances that dazzle eyes, while emptying purses and testing patience that grows thinner with each passing hour of mandatory appreciation for artistic achievements that serve diplomatic purposes alongside aesthetic ones. You settle into your carved chair with the resignation of someone who understands that royal enjoyment of evening diversions isn't optional, but rather another form of political duty that requires enthusiastic participation, regardless of personal preferences or energy levels that have been depleted by full days of governance responsibilities. The evening's entertainment begins with Master Geoffrey the Troubadour, whose melodic voice carries songs that seem innocent until you decode their hidden meanings about territorial disputes, marriage negotiations, and military preparations that official diplomatic channels haven't yet acknowledged. His ballad about a brave knight's quest for golden treasure actually describes Duke Robert's campaign against Eastern territories, while the romantic song about separated lovers contains detailed intelligence about current succession disputes in neighbouring kingdoms. Medieval musical entertainment operates as information network where coded messages travel faster than official correspondence, while providing plausible denial about sensitive intelligence sharing. Lady Margaret's daughters perform dances that demonstrate their marriage eligibility through choreographed displays of grace, fertility, and political sophistication that communicate more effectively than formal diplomatic presentations. Their movements tell stories about family alliances, territorial claims, and economic assets while showcasing physical attributes that potential marriage negotiators evaluate according to criteria that blend aesthetic appreciation with practical breeding considerations. You applaud with enthusiasm that feels increasingly forced as each performance extends beyond reasonable limits while serving functions that extend far beyond simple entertainment into matrimonial marketing campaigns. The acrobats who tumble across the hall's stone floors risk life and limb for applause that determines their continued employment alongside personal survival. Their death-defying stunts providing metaphors for political risks that nobles face daily, while maintaining appearances of stability despite underlying dangers that could prove equally lethal. Their leader, Master Pietro, bears scars from previous performances that suggest entertainment careers involve mortality rates comparable to military service. Though their audience appreciation fluctuates according to the political moods that have nothing to do with artistic competence or physical courage, your food taster continues his deadly vigil throughout the evening's festivities, sampling delicacies that accompany entertainment while maintaining vigilance against poisoning attempts that could arrive disguised as hospitality offerings from guests whose loyalty remains questionable despite their elaborate demonstrations of respect and affection. Young Edgar's nervous energy increases as wine flows more freely among assembled nobles, because alcohol consumption creates opportunities for both accidental indiscretions and deliberate assassination attempts that exploit relaxed security conditions during social gatherings. The puppet show that follows the musical performances employs wooden figures to tell stories that living actors couldn't present without risking execution for treason, their inanimate characters voicing criticisms about royal policies and noble behaviour that would constitute sedition if spoken by human performers. Master Thomas manipulates his marionettes with skill that transforms simple entertainment into sophisticated political commentary. His wooden kings and queens acting out scenarios that mirror real court situations, while maintaining sufficient fictional distance to avoid immediate retribution for uncomfortable truths about power dynamics. Comedy performances by Master Ralph the Fool push boundaries of acceptable discourse through humour that allows dangerous topics to be addressed indirectly, while providing entertainment that releases social tensions created by political pressures that affect everyone present. His jokes about tax collection methods target specific administrators with surgical precision, while maintaining pretense of general observation about human nature rather than personal attacks that could justify violent retaliation. Medieval comedy operates in dangerous territory, where laughter serves as both shield and weapon depending on audience reactions that determine whether performers receive rewards or punishment. The theatrical presentation that dominates the evening's second half recreates historical battles with dramatic flair that transforms military disasters into entertainment spectacles where tragedy becomes triumph through artistic interpretation that emphasizes heroism while minimizing casualties that actually resulted from strategic failures and tactical incompetence. The actors wear costumes that cost more than soldiers' annual salaries while performing combat scenes that bear little resemblance to actual warfare's brutal realities, their performances serving propaganda purposes that reinforce royal legitimacy through selective historical memory. Musical competitions between visiting performers create cultural diplomacy opportunities where artistic excellence represents national capabilities alongside entertainment value. Their skills demonstrating educational systems and patronage programs that indicate kingdom prosperity and governmental competence. The French lute player's technical mastery suggests sophisticated court culture that could intimidate less educated audiences, while the Spanish dancer's passionate performance communicates emotional intensity that might indicate either artistic temperament or political volatility, depending on interpretation preferences. The poetry recitations that interrupt musical performances demonstrate linguistic sophistication while providing forums for subtle political messaging, through classical references that educated audiences interpret according to contemporary situations that mirror ancient conflicts. Master William's epic about Trojan War heroes actually discusses current siege tactics, while his romantic verses about mythological lovers contain intelligence about marriage negotiations that haven't reached public announcement stages, medieval poetry serves multiple functions simultaneously, creating entertainment that educates while informing through artistic media that reaches audiences more effectively than dry political treatises. Gambling games that accompany evening entertainment create informal economic networks where nobles exchange wealth according to luck and skill, while building relationships that serve political purposes beyond simple monetary transactions. The dice games that consume considerable attention involve stakes that represent serious financial commitments alongside social positioning that affects future alliance possibilities, because winning and losing patterns establish reputations for rule judgment and risk tolerance that influence diplomatic negotiations and military command assignments. The dancing that concludes formal entertainment provides final opportunities for political networking disguised as social pleasure, with partner selections that communicate alliance preferences, while dance techniques demonstrate cultural sophistication and physical capabilities relevant to military service and a marriage suitability. You navigate these social requirements with growing fatigue that makes concentration increasingly difficult while maintaining appearances that political necessity demands, regardless of personal comfort levels that decrease steadily throughout extended evening programs. The gift presentations that punctuate evening entertainment create additional layers of political communication where valuable objects carry messages about respect levels, alliance commitments, and economic capabilities that supplement verbal diplomacy through material demonstrations of wealth and technological access. The jeweled goblet that Duke Robert presents suggests either friendship or subtle threat depending on interpretation, while your own reciprocal gifts require careful consideration to avoid sending unintended messages about weakness or excessive generosity that could encourage additional demands. Wine consumption throughout the evening creates security concerns alongside social lubrication that facilitates conversations impossible under normal circumstances, though increased alcohol intake also raises risks of indiscreet revelations that enemies could exploit for intelligence gathering or blackmail opportunities. Your wine steward monitors consumption levels with vigilance that rivals battlefield commanders watching enemy movements, because drunk nobles make decisions that sober kingdoms regret for generations while providing entertainment that proves expensive beyond immediate costs. As midnight approaches and entertainment finally winds toward conclusion, you reflect on evening obligations that transform personal leisure time into extended political performance where every gesture carries meaning and every response influences future relationships that determine kingdom stability. The applause you provide feels increasingly mechanical as fatigue battles duty, in struggles that will continue tomorrow night with different performers presenting similar challenges to patience that grows thinner with each passing political season. The departure protocols that conclude evening entertainment require final diplomatic interactions where farewell courtesies establish expectations for future social obligations while providing last opportunities for intelligence gathering through casual conversations that seem spontaneous but serve carefully planned reconnaissance objectives. You bid farewell to guests whose true intentions remain mysteries, despite hours of shared entertainment that revealed more about their artistic preferences than political loyalties. Knowing that tomorrow will bring the analysis of tonight's interactions by advisors who observed everything while appearing to enjoy performances that served functions beyond simple amusement, the castle settles into nighttime quiet as the last echoes of evening entertainment fade into memory, leaving you finally alone in the chambers where shadows dance against stone walls that have witnessed centuries of royal solitude punctuated by moments of genuine peace that feel increasingly precious as political responsibilities multiply with each passing day. You climb the narrow spiral staircase that leads to your private tower room, each step carrying you further from the public performance that defines princely existence toward the rare sanctuary where authentic thoughts can emerge without diplomatic calculation or strategic consideration. The tower chamber represents your most treasured refuge within a life that offers few opportunities for unguarded moments. Its windows providing views across moonlit countryside that stretch beyond political boundaries into territories where ordinary people sleep without calculating tomorrow's alliance possibilities or military threats. The simple wooden desk that holds your private journals occupies space beside a single chair worn smooth by countless hours of contemplation, creating an environment deliberately sparse compared to the elaborate furnishings that surround your public life. Here, away from advisors and courtiers, you can confront questions that daylight responsibilities force you to suppress or postpone. The leather-bound journal that records your private thoughts contains entries that would fascinate historians, while potentially destroying your political future if discovered by enemies who understand that personal doubts can become public vulnerabilities when exploited by skilled propagandists. Tonight's entry begins with reflections on the gap between public expectations and private realities, between the confident prince that subjects see and the uncertain young man who questions whether inherited authority truly qualifies him for responsibilities that affect thousands of lives through decisions made under pressure that allows little time for moral philosophy or careful reflection. Your contemplation of recent military campaign experiences reveals internal conflicts between the glory that chronicles will record and the human costs that official histories typically minimize or ignore entirely. The enemy knights who fell before your weapons possessed families who mourn their deaths, while your own casualties included men whose trust you carried into battle situations where leadership decisions determined who survived to return home. The weight of command extends beyond tactical considerations into moral territories, where classical education provided theoretical frameworks but little practical guidance for reconciling necessary violence with Christian teachings about mercy and forgiveness. The marriage negotiations that dominate current political discussions create additional sources of private anxiety as you contemplate the intersection of personal desire with dynastic obligation, wondering whether genuine affection can develop within relationships primarily designed to serve territorial expansion and alliance formation. The portraits of potential brides that decorate your chambers represent human beings whose own happiness depends partly on your choices, though their preferences carry less weight in final decisions than economic and political calculations that treat hearts like commodities to be exchanged for strategic advantages. The religious questions that emerge during today's theological discussions continue to trouble thoughts that seek reconciliation between divine commandments and earthly responsibilities that sometimes demand actions contrary to spiritual ideals. Father Benedict's explanations about just war theory provide intellectual frameworks for understanding when violence serves righteous purposes, but practical applications prove more complex when actual conflicts involve moral ambiguities that resist simple categorization into good versus evil narratives that make decision-making easier for leaders who must maintain public confidence while harboring private doubts. Your relationship with subjects who depend on royal leadership creates psychological burdens that intensify during quiet moments when the true scope of responsibility becomes clear, without political advisors providing convenient abstractions that distance personal involvement from policy consequences. The peasants who work lands your family has controlled for generations trust decisions made in castle chambers to protect their welfare alongside kingdom security, though their voices rarely reach royal ears directly through social hierarchies that filter information according to political convenience rather than factual accuracy. The physical exhaustion that accompanies each day's multiple obligations, military training, diplomatic negotiations, household management, religious duties, and social performances accumulates into chronic fatigue that private rest periods can only partially address because mental stress proves more draining than physical exertion. Your body may recover from sword practice and horseback riding, but your mind continues processing political implications that extend far beyond immediate circumstances into future scenarios that could determine kingdom survival through decisions that seem insignificant when made, but prove crucial when their consequences emerge. The loneliness inherent in royal position becomes most apparent during these solitary hours, when authentic human connection feels impossible due to social distances that prevent genuine friendship with subjects who always remain aware of status differences that influence every interaction. Your childhood companions have evolved into political allies whose loyalty may depend more on personal advantage than emotional attachment. While new acquaintances approach relationships with awareness of potential benefits that royal favour could provide for their own ambitions and family advancement. The castle's nighttime sounds provide familiar comfort through their consistency across years of residence. Though you've learned to distinguish normal settling noises from potential security threats that could indicate assassination attempts by enemies who understand that princes are most vulnerable when separated from bodyguards, who maintain constant vigilance during public appearances. The guards who patrol corridors outside your chambers provide protection that enables rest while serving as reminders that constant danger accompanies royal blood through political circumstances that make every enemy of the crown a potential threat to your personal survival. Dreams that visit royal sleep often blend wish fulfillment with anxiety manifestations, creating nighttime experiences where idealized versions of princely life compete with nightmarish scenarios involving military disasters, diplomatic failures, and succession crises that destroy kingdoms through leadership inadequacy. These unconscious narratives reveal psychological pressures that conscious thought attempts to suppress during waking hours, when public confidence requires projecting certainty regardless of private uncertainties that multiply with increasing knowledge about governance complexity. The books that line your chamber walls provide intellectual escape alongside educational reinforcement, their contents ranging from classical philosophy to contemporary military treatises that offer perspectives on leadership challenges that transcend specific historical periods. Marcus Aurelius's meditations on imperial responsibility speak directly to modern princely concerns, while Vegetius's military strategies remain relevant despite technological changes that alter tactical details without modifying fundamental principles about command psychology and strategic thinking. Your correspondence with foreign princes creates networks of understanding that transcend national boundaries through shared experiences of royal pressure that commoners never face regardless of their personal challenges and social positions. These letters provide opportunities for honest discussion about leadership difficulties that official diplomatic communications cannot address directly. Though even private correspondence requires caution about revealing vulnerabilities that could be exploited during future conflicts or diplomatic negotiations, the weight of future expectations grows heavier during contemplative moments when the full scope of eventual responsibilities becomes clear through succession planning that transforms distant possibilities into immediate preparation requirements. Your father's health remains strong, but royal mortality creates urgency about readiness for assuming full leadership responsibilities that currently exist as theoretical preparations rather than practical necessity. Though medieval political circumstances can change rapidly through natural death, assassination, or military disaster, Historians still argue whether medieval princes experienced psychological pressures comparable to modern leaders, but surviving personal documents suggest that power's burdens remain consistent across historical periods despite changing political contexts and technological environments. The human cost of leadership decisions, the isolation that accompanies supreme authority, and the moral complexity of governance create stress patterns that transcend specific cultural circumstances while manifesting through different social frameworks and religious interpretations. As sleep finally approaches and your exhausted mind releases its grip on daily concerns that will resume tomorrow with renewed intensity, you find comfort in the knowledge that countless predecessors have faced similar challenges while maintaining kingdom stability through personal sacrifice that history records imperfectly but honours through continued political survival. The crown may grow heavier with each passing year, but it also represents continuity that extends beyond individual lifespans into dynastic legacy that transforms personal struggles into historical significance. The gentle wind that whispers through tower windows carries away today's worries while bringing tomorrow's possibilities. Their sound providing natural music that soothes troubled thoughts better than any court entertainment. Your breathing slows as consciousness fades into rest that provides temporary escape from responsibilities that will return with dawn light. But for now, in these precious moments of genuine solitude, you can simply exist as yourself rather than the symbol others need you to be. As you drift towards sleep, your mind releases the day's accumulated tensions, allowing thoughts to flow like gentle streams carrying worries away from consciousness that has carried too much weight for too many hours. The moonlight that filters through your window creates silver patterns on the chamber floor, their beauty offering simple pleasure that requires no political interpretation or strategic analysis, just aesthetic appreciation that connects you to the basic human capacity for wonder that survives despite the complications that surround royal existence. Your breathing deepens as sleep approaches, each exhale releasing another layer of pressure that builds throughout days filled with decisions that affect countless lives alongside your own survival prospects. The sounds of night, gentle wind, settling stone and distant guard calls create a symphony of security that wraps around your chamber like protective blankets woven from familiar routine and established safety. Your muscles relax as tension flows away, leaving behind the simple peace that comes with temporary suspension of responsibility. Dreams begin to form at the edges of consciousness, their imagery blending the day's experiences with hopes and fears that conscious thought keeps carefully controlled. In these emerging visions, the weight of crowns transforms into lightness. Difficult choices become simple, and the burdens of leadership dissolve into the kind of freedom that exists only in sleep's gentle embrace. Your mind drifts deeper into rest that provides